Okay. Thank you.
Welcome to the Republican Professor. This morning we have with us a very special guest, an honored guest,
Thank
my
you.
former student, Samra Dracevic, right? Is that how you say your
That's
last name?
right. That's right.
It's been
Yes,
a
thank you.
while. Yeah.
It's been a while, but it's really, really nice to see you. And I
Uh,
really mean this. As I said, my dear professor, one of the best professors I've ever had in my life, and
mm,
definitely a professor that changed my course of thinking, in many ways. So it's
wow.
really nice to be here. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
That's a high compliment coming from you because I have a lot of respect for you.
Thank
You
you so much.
you
Thank you.
because I know some of what you've gone through in your life, and you're one of my older students.
Mhm.
When you came through Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, you were, I want to say you were in your late 20s or 30, maybe.
I was actually, that's right. I was in my late 20s.
Hmm.
Yes,
Okay,
that's true. That is
so I
true.
didn't make that up. Okay, good.
Mhm.
So you had some years on your colleagues there at Loyola Marymount sitting in the class. What class
Mhm.
was it? Was it philosophy of human nature?
Yes, yes.
Morning,
I want to say it
early
was
morning.
like philosophy 116, if I
Yeah,
remember the number
that's right.
correctly, something like that.
That's right.
Yes.
It was called
Mhm.
philosophy of human nature.
Mhm.
They've since changed it. They got rid of philosophy of human nature at Loyola. Don't ask me why they did that.
Mhm.
But it's really good to see you. You're still in Los Angeles?
I am. I am still
Uh-huh.
in Los Angeles. Yes. Not too far from LMU, actually. Pretty close to
That's what I okay,
LMU.
so you're still there. Okay, oops.
I'm still here.
Uh-huh.
I am. But it's interesting what you said earlier. Kind of speaking about age. Because I
Hmm.
think
Yeah.
honestly, I think the whole LMU experience was an amazing experience for me on so many different levels, and I think one of the main reasons is that, yes, I was a bit older among other students who were pretty young, most of them, I would say, in the classroom were like, I don't know, 19, 20, 21, pretty young. And that actually made me feel really grateful that I
Hmm.
went to, or I shouldn't say went to college at that age, but that I was able to go to college at that age, because I think I had a much, much greater appreciation for all these classes. And I feel like for me personally, there was a greater sense of urgency. Like every single class, I wanted to absorb everything I could, because it just felt so important to me. Because I think now that I think back to it, I think that was sort of the beginning of a phase in my life where I started to become really, really aware of time and the importance of not wasting your time, and the importance of really knowing what you want, where you're headed, and really appreciating, uh, you know, in terms of that experience, the knowledge. And just I was super, super happy about that experience, and then also feeling like, oh my God, I'm at Loyola Marymount University. To me, that was like such a dream school, not only because the campus is super gorgeous, but also I felt very, honestly, very, very blessed to be there. And just like, it's like almost, for me, it felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? Now, you did mention like, oh, a little bit about me. Maybe for your viewers, for your listeners, I could just kind of
Sure.
quickly mention that I was born in former Yugoslavia, Montenegro, specifically in a small village in Montenegro. I am
That's what
Albanian.
your accent is? I because I thought
Mhm.
it was New York. I thought it was Queens.
Oh,
Queen.
no,
I'm kidding. I'm
no,
kidding. I'm
no.
giving you a hard.
However, I do have family in Queens, so
Oh
so
shoot! I should have
yeah,
picked
yeah.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, I have many family members in Queens actually, but I was born in
Mhm.
a small village in Montenegro, and if we're going to get very technical, I am Albanian by nationality, and then at a young age,
Mhm.
my family and I moved to Sweden, and so I grew up in Sweden, and then later on, I came to LA. Mostly because I wanted to go to school. I always wanted to go to school in America. There was just something about America that really appealed to me. So maybe coming from that perspective, I just felt like I saw Loyola as this, I don't know, incredible place and this incredible opportunity. I just couldn't believe that I was there.
Mm.
So, mhm,
Yeah, it is a beautiful campus.
mhm.
Um, I oftentimes compared it to Pepperdine because I was going up between Pepperdine and Loyola for over a decade on PCH. Have you ever been to Pepperdine's campus?
I have actually. I was I almost applied for one of their master programs there,
Hmm.
but I just it never happened. I
Yeah,
kind of changed my mind last minute, but yeah,
mm,
I've been there. I've been to
it's
their
expensive.
campus. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a delightful campus. I've had a lot of time to do deep work on that campus, walk around in my thoughts by myself, looking for owls. Um, and I've done the same thing at Loyola Marymount.
Hmm.
But we had an early morning class. It was what, 8 o'clock, nine something. Which one were you in?
I think I could be wrong, but I want to say maybe around 10-ish, 11-ish, maybe,
All right, okay, all
or
right,
maybe I'm
maybe.
wrong. Maybe could be.
It was in the morning, definitely,
Hmm.
because I always taught the mornings there.
Hmm.
No one else wanted those classes, so it was an easy way for me to ensure my own employability because no one wants to teach those 8 a.m. classes. Um, but yeah, you were a delightful student to have. And when I when I found out
Thank
about
you.
your background as an immigrant and from Yugoslavia, I didn't know anything about Yugoslavia besides roughly where it was. I knew it was on the eastern side of, isn't the Adriatic Sea, right?
That's right.
Off
That's
of
right.
Italy.
Hmm.
Okay. So I have that right. Former Soviet bloc country. Is
Hmm.
that correct?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you
Yes.
grow up speaking Russian,
No,
or is that
actually,
too is that
no, I
earlier?
did not grow up speaking Russian. However, had I continued to go to school there at some point, learning Russian would have been sort of mandatory.
Okay.
So, for example, my mom um, had to learn Russian in school.
Mm,
So that was more for my parents and
gotcha.
also for my generation. But like I said, we left when I had just started fourth grade. So I didn't get to that
Yeah.
particular grade where it's required that you study Russian, unfortunately, because I really love the Russian language. But
What is your mother tongue?
like I said, in this small
Albanian?
village, we spoke Albanian and Serbo-Croatian. Let me call it Serbo-Croatian, although it's a little bit controversial. Some people prefer to call it Montenegrin. Some people prefer to call it Serbian. I'll just
Okay.
call it Serbo-Croatian to keep it simple. Yes. So these are the two, I would say, languages that I grew up with in the household.
And so both were spoken by your parents in the household when you grew up?
Yeah, not by my mom, because my mom uh, doesn't speak the language. She understands Albanian, but she doesn't speak it.
Okay.
So it was kind of a mostly between, I would say, my grandfather and my father, and my uncles and my father, my
Hmm.
aunts and my father. Yes. Mhm.
And which language are they similar or are they totally different?
No, no, they're not. So
Oh man,
speaking of Russian,
holy cow.
I would compare Serbo-Croatian more to Russian because it's a Slavic language. So it's very similar to Russian, which is why I can understand some of Russian. There are many similar words in the Russian language. Albanian is I truly can't think of another language that I know that I can compare Albanian to, because
Mm.
it's a very unique language. It's an Indo-European language, and so it's very, very different from Serbo-Croatian. I would say they have
Mm.
truly nothing in common in that sense. So they're two completely different languages.
What's Indo-European mean? What's the Indo part?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it just means that I could be wrong, but I think that it or historically originated from like the Indian part of like the part Indian part of the world. I could
Mhm.
be wrong, but I think that's sort of what it means.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Okay. So somehow that has something to do with European languages. It's mysterious to me because German seems so different than the Romance languages.
True, but then again, German is a Germanic language, so it's very similar to Swedish.
Okay.
I don't want to say very similar to Swedish, but it's definitely has. It's similar to Swedish, to
Danish.
Norwegian, Danish,
Mm,
for
okay.
sure.
Gotcha. Um, you are multilingual, and does that
Mhm.
help you learn other languages? Because you were multilingual as a kid?
You know, my students ask me this a lot too, and I think it's a good and it's an interesting question, but I don't know. I think it's definitely a benefit. If you grew up, if you were exposed to different languages growing up, it certainly helps to learn other languages. But I also think at the end of the day, you have to have a certain curiosity and a certain
Yeah.
just, willingness to learn languages, and I think curiosity, if you sort of analyze polyglots, which I've done. I mean, there are amazing videos on YouTube of just different polyglots from different parts of the world, and I feel like all of them tend to have one thing in common, which is, oh, I'm really curious about what that
Uh,
language sounds like, what it
yeah.
means. I want to know how to express myself in that language. So I think that's a must in in
Yeah.
most situations
Sure.
if you really want to learn a bunch of other languages. And I think I've always had that curiosity about other languages. I just
Hmm.
always want to know, what does that mean, which honestly today, for example, is it's almost impossible for me to watch a movie that's, I don't know, let's say if I were to watch a movie that's in Korean, because I don't speak Korean, and then there are English subtitles, obviously, because that's the only way for me to be able to watch the movie and understand it. I won't be able to finish the movie because I find myself constantly paying attention to what they're saying. And then I want to know, like, oh, okay, so is that how you say this? Is that how you say
Right.
that? So instead of paying attention to the movie or the show, I'll actually focus on what they're saying in the subtitles. So I
Hmm.
think there's that
Yeah.
innate curiosity about languages
Right.
that got me really interested in languages.
Yeah, there's a professor at Loyola Marymount in the philosophy department named Jason Bear,
Hmm.
and his last name is spelled Baehr,
Hmm.
and he has written a book called um, oh crap, what's it called? It's on what you're talking about, intellectual virtue, and he says curiosity is a key part of that. It's a key aspect of learning. So you're here conversing with us in English. You watch a Korean movie, you watch the English subtitles. Which number of language is English for you? Because you speak English better than a lot of my
Oh,
students. That's their only
thank
language.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
A lot of
well,
my students would not know what the word polyglot means, for example. I don't think I ever hear that term from people. But
I think
which number is
that
this? Is this four for you?
you, well, it would be four, yes, because
Okay.
Serbo-Croatian, Albanian, and then Swedish, and then English was after Swedish. So yes, it
You're
would be
four, you're
four.
talking to us in your fourth language.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. That gives a sense of your talent and your curiosity.
Thank
How's
you.
your Swedish?
Oh, I mean, I'm fluent in Swedish, of course, because I grew up there. I went to
Mhm.
school there. I
Wow.
finished high school there. I have family there, friends. And so I use it on a daily basis when I speak to family. So yeah, I am fluent in Swedish. But see, if I may just kind of add maybe a few more things that could be interesting in
Sure.
terms of the English language, you
Please.
know, coming from Europe, I think, especially coming from Eastern Europe originally, I think we grew up with this deep fascination with the United States of America. And so I'm saying that like the United States of America, I think that was always such a magical word to us. I remember growing up, like all the great things, all the amazing things, all the unheard of things always came from America. And so,
Can you give an example? Give a few examples of the unheard
sure,
of things so that we have an idea of what you mean.
sure. It may sound a little silly, but I'll give you a perfect example. As I mentioned earlier, I have a family in Queens. I have family in different parts of the United States, and so before I ever set foot on the American soil, so to speak, they had already lived here for years, raised their families, had their jobs here and so on. However, they would uh, come to see us, come to see family in our small village almost every summer, I would say, if not every summer, every other summer. And so some of my
From
first,
New York. They would come
yes,
from New. Oh, wow. That's a
from New
big.
York, from California, from Detroit, different parts of the US, but I would say mostly New York and California. And so one of my earliest memories was them arriving with all these suitcases, and I always knew that there would be some like amazing toys, or like, for example, rollerblades. I remember that was my first time seeing rollerblades when they brought rollerblades from the United States. And
Wow.
it was like the coolest thing, and I mean, I kind of don't want to give the wrong impression. It's not like in my village we were somehow like closed off from the world and we had never seen rollerblades. No, but it was just so special coming
Mhm.
from the United States. And it's funny because I recently caught up with one of my childhood friends. We both are born and raised in the same village. And we were talking, we were reminiscing specifically about this. And then she said, do you remember this, how these clothes smelled? Like I remember that, like that American smell. It was the
There was an
clothes smelled
American
so
smell.
good.
Wow. And it
the
was a good
clo-
smell.
yeah, the clothes smelled
The New
so
York smell
good.
was good. Wow.
We were like, wow. So those
Wow.
were kind of my
We have small
earliest.
towns here too, but it's I get a sense of what you're saying. I mean, we have small rural towns here. It's not quite like what you're talking about. What year was that going to be? Like the year that you saw rollerblades,
I
just
would
so we get a sense.
say late 80s, probably, maybe
Late
like
80s. Oh,
let's
that's
say
good.
88,
During the
87.
Soviets?
Mm-hmm,
During
mm-hmm,
Soviets.
mm-hmm.
Oh. So you had a positive view of America during the Soviet Union?
Yes, from my perspective, I absolutely did. And
Was
then
that discouraged by any authorities, that the communist authorities?
you know what? I don't remember that as a kid. I
So you were
really
too little
don't.
for that.
I don't remember. I remember
Yeah.
we were
The adults would have
wearing,
different memories, maybe.
yeah, probably. I remember we would have to wear those
Of course, that was quite late in the Soviet. That was right before the fall of the Soviet Union.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
people had a maybe different view at that point. Well, can you describe that smell for us? I don't know. It's
I
hard to
mean,
describe a smell.
it was just like it smelled like really. like brand new clothes, like
Mm,
that. It had that American
fresh.
smell. I
Okay.
can't exactly explain it. And we were literally cracking up just recently when I met up with my well, my friend, but really a cousin as well. Because
Mm,
you see, in my village, we call everyone, I don't want to say we call everyone a cousin, but somehow we are related, like very, very distantly, perhaps, but we still call each other cousins. So technically that's my cousin,
okay.
not in the terms that you
Sure.
see a cousin here,
Yeah.
but or
Yeah.
or view someone as your cousin here.
Hmm.
But anyway, we were reminiscing on that, and that was one of the first things we were like, oh my god, remember the smell, and then I
Right.
remember all the kids. So the let's call them the American kids, although technically they are American Albanian kids because they were born in America, but they grew up with these two cultures, right?
Yeah.
So I always thought like, oh my God, they were dressed nicely. And I loved that they could speak English. So I remember I was really fascinated by that at a super
Wow.
young age. Like, oh my God, I want to speak English too, type of thing.
Would you say that the word cousin, as you're using it, is almost a synonym for neighbor in
Actually,
that
more
context?
more like family, more like
Okay.
family.
All right.
And then
What would,
there's always that sense of respect that comes with that too, because somehow our forefathers were connected to each other. Maybe it
gotcha.
was my great great grandfather, her great great grandfather. So
Did you have
so
the same last names or
we
different
did
names?
different last names,
Hmm.
but I
Okay.
mean, if you actually look at the tribes, family tribes, you
Mm,
always find some kind of a connection. So
yeah.
I can give you an example. Growing up, my grandfather would always teach me, like, he would teach me, how do I say this in English? I'm not exactly sure, but he would teach me, like, okay, our last name, but then his father's great grandfather's last, like, he was like, I had to
Wow.
learn. I had to learn their first and last name, first and last name, first and last name. And he would always test me, like, how far back can you go?
Mm,
So that was kind of a way to keep that memory alive, that,
wow.
oh, we are related to these people. We are related to these people. So
Gotcha.
maybe a fun fact. I don't know if I can just refresh my camera here real quick because sometimes it gets blurry for some reason. I'm not sure. Um, so maybe a fun fact would be, when time comes to get married in my village. Now, mind you, I'm talking about my childhood, and many things have changed in my village as they have around the world, right? I haven't been back home in many, many years, but growing up, when families were becoming interested in, maybe finding a husband for someone in their family or whatever, there was always a strong emphasis on, we can absolutely not be related, which, as you listen to this, like, well, obviously you shouldn't be related to someone that you're married to. Yes, obviously, but in our case, it's like, literally, you got to go back, 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 make sure that we have no relation at all, because otherwise that's a family member, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Wow. What's the name of your village?
uh, my village is called Shipchanik, but then there's kind of a how do I say that? There is also Tuzi next to Shipchanik, and so Tuzi is considered to be like a little bit, like a bit bigger. You can go and have a coffee there, and you know maybe buy your newspaper or something. Whereas Shipchanik, when I was growing up, was like this tiny, tiny, tiny little village.
Okay.
I think we had one supermarket there, which opened up much, much later. So very, very tiny village when I was growing up there, mind you. I'm sure things have
Sure.
changed now. Mhm.
I wrote out the phonetic because I don't know how to spell it. and I have a
Mhm.
sense that if I knew how to spell it, I still wouldn't necessarily know how to say it. But I just can you spell it for us? Is there a spelling in English?
Yes, let's see if I can sheep chanik. So it would be like SH.
No cussing on this program now. I know where you're trying to sneak in there.
SHIP, and
Oh,
then
P is in
mhm,
toy?
yeah, P
P
as
is
in
in
Peter, P as in
Peter.
Peter.
Okay. Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
And then CH,
hmm
and then
hmm
ANIK.
Oh wow, that was close to what I put.
Shipchanik,
Cool. Okay.
shipchanik. So maybe something to think about could be ship, like a ship in English, like, oh, there's a ship. I see a ship. So it's like ship, ship chanik.
Gotcha. hmm And then the other one,
The other one is
Tuesday.
TUZI. And there is,
Oh, okay.
I
Pretty
think
close
there
to what I was
is
put.
I think there's like the evening news or something on ABC or NBC or something like that, and they have this host or whatever that's been with them for God knows how long, and it's like, "Good evening, everyone, Michelle Tuzi" or something like that. And I remember thinking, "Oh my God, that's the name of my village. I will
Oh,
close to
gotcha.
my village, Tuzi. Yes.
How far was the Tuesday from your village to get a coffee and get a newspaper?
Walking distance like 10 minutes, less than 10
That's not too
minutes.
bad.
No, not
And
at all.
a fast walk or a slow walk?
Well,
Do people walk fast like New York, or they?
I would say, let's say somewhere in the middle, not too slow, not too fast,
Gotcha.
15 minutes. But then again, it depends how deep into the village you live. So if
Mm,
the further into the village that you live, then it's going to take you longer to walk. So actually, it was pretty common for, if you just didn't feel like walking, or if it was really hot, you could always just stop someone that was driving and they'll just pick you up and take you. So
okay.
yeah, that was
So
pretty cool.
people walk a lot there when you in
Yeah,
your childhood?
yeah. Especially back then, people would walk, and then you also have to remember, people have their, let's say, their little farms with the animals, and
Mhm.
their piece of land. They are
Did they own
planting
the
their.
land?
Oh yes.
They owned it? Oh,
Yes.
there was ownership in Soviet Union?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how I remember it. People own their land, and
Okay.
it
That was
very,
what people said? Okay.
yeah, and very often, it's like, the family owns it, so it might be
Gotcha.
divided between three brothers or two brothers or whatever. But yeah, I would say the family owns it. Yes.
Gotcha.
Uh-huh. So people had their farm, their animals, their
What kind of
vegetables,
animals?
fruits. Well, I would say cows. Like, for example, my
Mhm.
grandma and grandpa had cows. Some people had goats. Some people had sheep, chickens. So in that sense,
Pretty
we would
similar.
get we would get
There.
amazing food from directly from the cow, directly from the sheep, the chickens. That's
But you
how
had good
I
food growing
remember.
up? Good
I
food?
would I would say so, yes. I always tell my students, like, our life was very simple, but I
Mm,
think to me it was amazing the way I remember my childhood. Remember, we left when I was 10 years old, so when I had just turned 10. So, I remember my childhood as very simple, but really, really amazing. I was always surrounded by family. Everyone knew each other. You did not have to worry about your kids' safety. I think there was also this sense of respect for older people, which I realize as I get older, I really, really appreciate. I think it's really important to
funny
have
how
that
that
sense
works.
of
Yeah.
respect
Mhm.
for older people, and
Right.
uh-huh.
I was going to ask you about the coffee and Tuesday, but as a 9-year-old, you probably never had coffee, right?
Well,
Or
I
did you ever
didn't.
have it?
I
Okay.
didn't, but I mean the central point of getting together every morning, especially during the summer, I mean, was coffee drinking. So the
Really?
neighbors would come over. Yeah, my grandma and grandpa, the house that we were living in. So
Is
we
this
were
hot
living,
coffee?
it's Turkish coffee.
So that's cold?
It's hot and apparently
That's
it's
hot.
really strong. To tell you
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
truth,
I've had Turkish coffee. I've been to Turkey, so I've
I've
been all
actually
over
never had it.
Turkey. I've had that. The climate. Uh, Tell us about what the summer is like. Is it hot? Do you have the
It's
four seasons?
it's really hot. And then there's the chirping of, I wish I knew the name in English, these little insects like
Hmm?
like this every
Is it
morning. I
humid?
would, no, it's usually dry heat, I would say. Dry heat. That's kind of
Okay.
how I remember it. And then I,
We have bugs similar to that in America in the South. Uh,
mhm,
eh,
mhm.
uh, Often and on the East Coast, where it's humid. Um, you typically, I think of it as the South. I think in the human areas, that's when you get most of that noise, that sound. It's like all night actually in the summertime. I don't
Actually,
know
it's
if you had
funny you
that.
say that because I've I can't think of the name of the movie right now, but I remember watching a few movies, American movies here in the United States that were filmed in the South. And then I remember hearing
Similar
that
sound.
sound. Yes. And I
Mhm.
remember having a reaction like, oh my God, that reminds me of when I was a kid, that chirping sound, like,
Interesting.
you
Yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and we were living together at the time. My mom, my dad, five kids. Were living with my grandma, my grandpa, my grandpa's brother and his wife, my uncles, and then one of the uncles married with kids, his wife. So we were a huge family living together at the time. And then you have to remember that every day someone else would come over to visit, maybe my aunts, her kids. And so that's how I remember the house. The house was always full of life. And so going back to the whole coffee thing, especially in the summers, my grandmother's porch was almost like a place where everyone would get together in the mornings. The neighbors would stop by. My mom would always wake up super early. And so they would drink coffee really early in the morning and just kind of talk to each other, and that's what I remember. That was always my first introduction to coffee. Like, hey, come over, let's have coffee. Hey, okay, I'm here, make coffee. And by the way, that's another thing in my village at the time. You never really called ahead of time, like, hey, are you guys at home? Can we come over? People just kind of came over. And again, the older I get, the bigger appreciation I have for that. There was something really awesome about that. Just people coming over whenever and having coffee and hanging out. I thought was really nice.
What were the Winters like? Cold? Mild? Snow?
Mild, I would say. Occasionally, not very often.
Mild
I would
winter?
say probably northern Montenegro would have much. The winters for them would be rough, I would say, but the southern part of Montenegro, I would say mild, mild. Now,
Hmm.
my recollection of winters as a child are not like super super strong. If I'm being honest with you, I tend to remember the summers more. But yeah.
Was
Mhm.
there a big difference in the seasons? Was it like, oh, one day it's like you can tell it's spring because the birds are chirping? Or
Well, yes, for sure. Yes. But also just family activities and like village
gotcha.
activities. That's how I remember it.
Okay.
Obviously, everyone has their own memories and experiences, but that's how I would remember it. So, for example, the fall was always, I always remember it as like the ladies in the village getting together and like they started making different different foods and maybe jam and things like that that we could have throughout the winter, so
Gotcha.
that to me was always like, okay, fall is coming, that's kind of how I would remember it. Or but yeah, the weather too, you had those fall colors and was just general really cozy and beautiful, I would say.
And you mentioned the food was good. Can you give us a sense of this? Is it vegetarian food? Is it how much meat are you eating?
Oh
Is it
no, I mean
milk,
there's
cheese, butter,
there's
bread?
a lot of meat.
A lot of meat. Okay.
There's a lot of milk, definitely cheese. You have to remember, former Yugoslavia, there's a strong influence of that Mediterranean diet. So
Yeah,
olives, green
I
olives,
love that
black
diet.
olives. Mhm.
I actually like that food. That sounds great.
I mean,
And
it's
so
delicious.
you have this picture of people coming over whenever, hanging out. That sounds like my childhood, actually. Um,
Hmm.
Now, when I have to ask this though,
Hmm.
were people working a lot? I mean, what's their job situation like where people could just come over and hang out and it doesn't distract you from your like where are you not at work? What are you working at home on Zoom in the 80s?
No, my
What?
God. No, 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 definitely no Zoom. But remember, as you said earlier,
Hold on, let me write that down. No Zoom in the
no
80s.
Zoom, no Zoom at that time. But as you said earlier, pretty much everyone owned their land.
Mhm.
Everyone owned their land. So it's
So
not like
everybody's
you had to, it's not like you had to
you have
worry
stuff
about
to
your,
do, but okay.
exactly. It's not like you have to worry about your mortgage or your, payments in that sense, right? And then
Gotcha.
everyone has, and I'm actually really deeply thinking about it right now. I would say everyone in the village had at least a cow. And if they didn't have a cow, then maybe their aunt had a cow or their grandma had a cow. And so
Mm,
that's how you would get milk, for example.
mhm.
I remember we planted our own vegetables, some of the fruits. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean we didn't go to the supermarket and buy, vegetables and fruits sometimes, or some milk
How would you
even.
get the money though to do that?
Well, my dad, for example, in our case, my grandpa, uh, and my dad and my uncles, I would say actually, so they were part of this. Our land. We've had planted, fruits and vegetables, and then they would spend a significant time during a certain season, and they would go to different cities and sell those fruits and vegetables. So they would be gone for, I don't know, 2 3 weeks sometimes, I would say,
Mhm.
because they were out there, selling fruits, vegetables, that kind of stuff. And so that was one source of income. And then also my dad worked as a driving instructor. So he was, teaching people how to drive. My uncles also worked. They also had a job. So, that's how we would support ourselves. Um, and then, of course, you had your cousins and family in the US who would always help out with money as well. They would send money to the family as well. And so that's how we would, that's how we were living at the time, right? To tell you the truth, women didn't work in the village. I would say most women didn't work. It was really common for the women to kind of be homemakers or housewives, as you would say in English, kind of care for the family. So I want to be very specific with that. They did not work outside of the
Yeah.
house, but
They
they were
didn't get paid
working.
for it. In other words, they worked, but
Exactly.
they didn't get paid for it.
Exactly. They worked
And they can't
insanely
be
hard.
fired.
Exactly. Yeah. So they worked
Cool.
insanely hard in the house and, with the kids and all of that, which that's another thing I'm super grateful for, because
What?
not all kids get to experience that feeling, of
Yeah,
coming home to a
that's right.
warm meal and
Hmm.
so much care and so much love. And, so.
Samra, you're a you're still a young woman and you have these memories that are your memories
Mm.
of the old world. And I think that's how I would put it because, I mean, a lot of us in America have a European ancestry, at least in our most recent ancestry. Depends on how far back you want to go, of course. But, the last several centuries, I would say, if you want to go back that far, maybe the last millennia, but you experienced firsthand the way life was like for most people in Europe for a long time, many,
Mm.
many, many, many centuries, and probably in the Middle East, probably in Africa, probably in to some extent other places as well. So you have this, and it seems like it was a happy childhood for you. You've mentioned that it was before you were 10. You have these very wonderful memories of growing up in place of your home.
Honestly, I will forever view those years as the happiest years of my life. 100%, 100%. And
Mm.
like I said, our life was simple. We were not, rich people by any means in terms of money or anything like that. But I think it was that simplicity, that closeness to family, that constant interaction with family that just made it so wonderful, like wonderful, truly, truly. And my mom she's from the city, so I my mom's dad passed away when she was relatively young, so I never got to meet my maternal grandfather, but I did get to meet my maternal grandmother, and she was also very present in our lives. Even though she lived in the city, she would come over a lot. She would bring, her bags from the city with goodies, and candy and la la la, and she would come over often. And so she was also, so were my mom's brothers, my uncles were a very strong presence in our life when I was a kid. So I remember that time as always being surrounded by family, by loved ones, by just really a really 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 nice time. And then, as you may remember, that was all just abruptly kind of stopped shortly after I turned 10 because
Yeah. What
things were
happened
be
when you turned 10?
well, things were becoming increasingly unstable in former Yugoslavia. And so my dad, so they were trying to draft as many men as possible to the military, even even if it wasn't like, oh yeah, we're gonna for sure send you to the military. It was like, well, you should be in the reserves, just in case we need to send you to the
Gotcha.
military. And so my dad was one of those people that, did not want to go to the military. He did not want to. He did, to put it in simple terms, he did not feel like it was worth putting his life on the line um, to fight for that type of a government at the time. So
Who would he be fighting for
well,
then if he was in the military?
my dad just didn't, he did not feel like first of all, my dad had a really
Who would he be fighting
strong,
against?
well, he would be fighting against, it's so complicated, the whole thing with former Yugoslavia,
Yeah.
on
Sorry.
the nationalistic perspective, on the
Mhm.
religious perspective. So it became super, super complicated.
Gotcha.
All of a sudden, people who were neighbors, were no longer like, okay, well, now there's that nationalistic barrier between us, there's
Mhm.
that religious barrier between us. Maybe we can't have that relationship anymore that we used to have during, former Yugoslavia or whatever, so who would he be fighting for? Well, it depends. Would he be fighting for the Serbs? Would he be fighting for the Montenegrinians? Would he be fighting for you know, et cetera, et cetera. So if you remember at the beginning of this conversation, when you asked me which language did you grow up, I mean, which languages were spoken in your household, I call it Serbo-Croatian. That's just the name I stick with because that's the name I grew up with. But today, even just naming a language from former Yugoslavia has become this like super annoyingly complicated thing, which is like, well, we're from Montenegro, so we speak Montenegrin, and we're from Croatia, and we speak Croatian, and we're from Bosnia, and we speak Bosnian, and we're from Serbia, and we speak Serbian. Essentially, if you ask me, it's the same exact language. It's just a different dialect, a different accent, if you will. So
Okay.
imagine saying, like, oh, I speak Texan and you speak Californian and you speak New Yorkan, which, yes, there are different accents. We do have the Southern accent. I get that.
Right.
But essentially, it's English. Essentially, it's English.
The
So,
grammar is the same. The
exactly.
spelling is the same.
Exactly. So, to go back to, who would he be fighting for? That's a really
Gotcha.
complicated question, but
Mm.
let's just put it this way. He did not want to be a part of that fight because he did not feel like it was worth putting
Gotcha.
your life on the line and putting, the life of your family and loved ones on the line. So that's kind of how we decided to leave Montenegro. And
You
so,
just mentioned, I don't know, four different groups: the Albanians, the Serbians, the Croatians, and the Montenegrins.
Bosnians.
Oh, Bosnians, yeah. So there's
And
five groups.
by the way, when
Am
we
I
when
counting
we're
that correctly? Is it five?
yes, well, Macedonians too were part of former Yugoslavia, I believe.
My goodness.
Macedonian, yes. Um,
You didn't even mention them yet.
so uh so
Aristotle.
so remember, like, yeah, speaking of the language, I remember as a kid, people would say, oh, I speak Yugoslavian. That was like totally okay to say. I remember it like that as a kid, but you don't do that anymore, obviously, so
Well, I'm
yeah.
glad it's not just me because I really don't do that either, but actually for a different reason because I didn't know anything about this until you said. But you have this very interesting, complicated political background. As a kid, did you understand all these little groups and did you think that it was complicated when you were a kid?
Not at all. Not at all. I didn't understand any of this. And that's honestly why I think uh, later on in my life, having a class like the one that I had with you was so extremely meaningful to me because I feel like that's when I was introduced to a whole new way of thinking because I never really thought about these things as a kid, and also the 4 years of schooling that I got in former Yugoslavia in my very tiny little village was very militant. That's how I remember it. It was
Oh,
super militant. You don't talk again, you don't speak you don't talk back to to your teacher. You don't go against your teacher. You don't question your teacher. Not that you're going to question your teacher that much at that age anyway, but I think that was kind of the general atmosphere in terms of education. I remember it being very militant. Honestly, it was very militant, and also the way that knowledge was given to us, and then the way we were reciprocating knowledge back to our teachers was super militant. I remember, like, every time you had to answer a question, I remember we had to like lift our like this, we had to like, it was very like this, and then stand up and say your answer and sit down. And if you disobeyed in any way, it wasn't unusual at all for the teacher to like hit us on the hands or something like that. Like, thank God that never happened to me, but it happened to my classmates, because they got a bad grade or they didn't do their homework, or so
that's wow.
that was not it was very militant. But had you asked me at that age, hey, Samra, how do you like this teaching style or whatever? Obviously, I wouldn't be able to be like, oh, I don't like it, or it's militant. It's something that I realized later on in life, especially since we ended up applying for political asylum essentially in Sweden. And so there I was introduced to a whole new way of schooling, which was more like the teacher asks you questions and wants to know what you think. And
Wow.
then when I moved to the US, I was introduced to like, what is that called? A multiple choice, multiple choice answers,
Yeah.
like fill in A, B, C, you know
They
what I
didn't
mean?
have
That
that
kind
in
of,
Sweden?
honestly, not that I can remember. Truly, it was
Okay.
always like asking you a question and then you have to, actually it resembled very much the way you would test us. You would ask us kind of a broad question and then here's your space and tell me about it, express
Mhm.
your opinions about it. That's the style that I remember from Sweden. Now, maybe I just don't remember the fill in the blank, I mean fill in the whatever ABC, but I don't remember honestly having that in Sweden or being introduced to that in Sweden. It was very like critical thinking, being introduced to all kinds of subjects, and some of them I remember were really uncomfortable to me at first because of my background,
Like what?
like questioning the existence of God. I remember feeling
In school,
really,
they said that they were trying to get you to question the existence of God in
well,
school?
yeah, just kind of talking about religion,
Really?
talking about the
Was this
possibility.
public school?
Oh yeah, yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes. We
So
went to,
religion was not off topic in public school in Sweden?
not at all. I don't think any subject was off topic if I remember it correctly.
What
Yeah.
what a concept.
Yeah, no, not at all. So we would
Okay.
talk about politics, we would talk
Really?
about religion, we would talk about all kinds of things. And I guess I didn't
And
realize
what age are you at this time?
uh 13, 14, 15, 14,
Maybe
15,
this would be a
16.
good time to step back and give a big picture so people can keep up with what's happening. You have
Mhm.
a very interesting childhood, wonderful childhood for you, in the village that you grew up in, the villages that you mentioned. Old world, old school, European type of life, rural. You got cows, you got chickens, you've got a small town, simple life, lots of walking, people just hanging out with each other, doing their work, small farms. And then war comes, and there's division and strife in that area that go back a long time. And you're 10. And then what happens when you're 10? What you go where exactly? You
Okay,
leave
so
Montenegro
we leave Montenegro, and I want to
at
be
10.
very clear. We leave Montenegro very abruptly. So I've gone back to this memory many times. This is how I remember it. I remember my dad picking me up from school, which was really weird because my dad, nobody picked us up from school really, except for when we were in kindergarten. Someone would come and pick us up and just take us home. But when you were like second, third, fourth grade, you would walk home with all your friends. We all lived in the same village. So, I mean, we would just walk home together. We would go to school together. School was located, I would say, less than 10 minutes from my grandmother's house. So it was a walking distance. We would walk together. My dad picked me up from school, and I remember thinking that was weird, kind of like, okay. And so I don't think, if I remember this correctly, I don't think I finished that day at school. I think I was just kind of picked up. My dad took me home,
In a
and
car,
then
in a
in the
truck.
car, yes, he
Okay.
drove us in the car. And then when we got home, I remember all these family members on the porch, that same porch where they would sit and hang out and drink coffee or whatever. Everyone was just like sad and crying. And, my mom had these like one or two small luggages, something like that. And then everyone was just saying goodbye. And then we were at this train station. I'm sorry, no, we went to my grandmother's house, my maternal grandmother's house in the city, just to say bye. And same thing there. Everyone was sad. Everyone was crying. And I specifically remember this sentence being said. Being due to the fact that my youngest sister was only 4 months old at the time, I remember someone saying at my grandma's house, like, oh, thank God she doesn't know what's going on. Like, thank God she's not old enough to know what's going on. So honestly, that's how I remember it. Now, if someone were to play the actual footage of what really, really happened, maybe I would, oh yeah, that too. But that's kind of how I remember it. And then that same evening, we were at a train station. We were on a train headed to Serbia, to my uncle's house, my mom's brother's house. And then we were there for a day or two, if I remember correctly. And then from there, we went to a cousin's house in Slovakia. Okay, so back then it was known as Czechoslovakia. Now it's known as Slovakia. And so that's how we ended up in Slovakia.
By train.
And yes, by train. And I remember the
Did you say
idea
it was a cousin's house again?
Yeah.
Okay,
That was my cousin's house. So he basically hosted all of us. And then I'm trying to think.
How long did it take for you to? Do you remember how long the train ride was roughly?
I don't remember
Days,
any of that.
hours? Okay.
No, maybe probably overnight or something like that.
Okay.
And then I'm thinking, yes, my dad's brothers came with us as well. And one of them had his family with him too. But I don't remember if we actually took off together, all of us, or if they just kind of followed us shortly after. Honestly, I don't remember that part. I have to double check with my parents. But I think they came a little bit after and just kind of met up with us in Slovakia. But essentially, the point was, let's stay in Slovakia for a little bit. Let's see what's going to happen with this whole situation, because things were boiling in former Yugoslavia. Like, my dad's prediction was that there's going to be a really ugly war, but it was still kind of unclear. Okay, where is this going to be? Is it going to be in Montenegro? Is it going to be in Serbia? Is it going to be in Bosnia? Is it going to be in Croatia? So we were kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. Maybe this will just, be over in a couple of months and we can return. But in fact, it just got worse and worse as time progressed. So we stayed in Slovakia for 4 months. And that's when my dad, my mom, and, us as a family, we decided, okay, we're going to move on. We're going to go north because we also had family there, cousins in Sweden. And so that's how we ended up in Sweden. My uncles actually ended up going back to Montenegro. They ended up returning to Montenegro.
How many people went to Slovakia with you? How many total?
Well, I remember there were more than 12 people living in that tiny little apartment. So definitely over 10 people. That's for sure.
Well, there are already people living there, right? So it would have been 9 people with you, or 10, or?
Well, it was, so put it this way, my mom and dad, 2, and their 5 kids, so 7. And then again, I don't know if our uncle met up with us later on. Gotcha. Or, but he came with his wife and 2 kids at the time. And then my other uncle wasn't married at the time.
And you're living in a small apartment for 4 months.
1-bedroom apartment.
A 1-bedroom apartment?
Yes.
Is this in a big city in Slovakia? Where is this at?
Yes.
What's the city?
It's in Bratislava.
Can you spell it?
That's the name. BRATIS Bratislava. SLAVA Bratislava.
And that's a big city?
Oh yeah.
Big city. Big city
big,
life.
big
Okay.
buildings, tall buildings,
All right. And that's
big
not just
city
because you're young
life.
that they're tall. They're
No,
not like
no.
really three stories or something.
Uh-huh. And
Okay.
also, don't let the kids outside by
Oh,
themselves. Don't
people.
let them play outside by themselves. Someone
Hmm.
always has to be with you.
How did you
Uh,
live? How did you go to the bathroom? How did you have food? How did you cook?
well,
How do you
my
do that? I don't-
my mom and my aunt would cook for us, but to be honest, our cousin was providing with food and
Wow.
supplies
That's
because
a lot of money.
he was just, yeah, really really nice guy, and he took good care of us. He provided with food
How
and
did you
money
sleep? On the floor?
on the floor, and I
Just all
remember,
squished on the floor?
yeah,
So
yeah, and
people,
then people were
what if you
sleeping
have to
in
go
the
to the
living.
bathroom? Yeah, yeah. If you have to go to the bathroom, you're stepping on people,
Well, no,
stepping
no,
on their
but
head.
no, but I mean,
Okay.
that I don't remember that being an issue per se, but
Was
I
there a
mean, it
bathroom?
wasn't, yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. There was.
Okay.
And
In the apartment or was it down the hall?
no, in the apartment. I mean, this
Okay.
was just a regular apartment in a regular building, like just a one
Gotcha.
bedroom apartment.
Okay.
And actually, my cousin didn't live there. It was one of his friends or something like that that lived there. And so
Oh,
um, he was also Albanian. And so we could just live with him. He let us stay with him for a little bit. And my cousin was bringing like food to us once a week and was hanging out with us every
were
day,
you
his
hiding?
family
Did
too.
you feel like you were hiding or did you feel like you're just trying to have a roof over your head and you can go
No,
outside, but you don't want to get lost?
no, no, I didn't feel like we were hiding, but I do remember it being a very uncomfortable experience
Mhm.
because all of a sudden, like I said, you can't play by yourself outside. I remember our cousin telling us like, oh, sometimes they kidnap kids here, and you don't want to, do not let the kids play outside by themselves. Always make sure you guys are outside with them. And we lived on like the seventh floor or like the eighth floor. It was really high up. And so I remember the elevator thing was also like a daily thing. If we wanted to go out and play, and someone
Oh,
always had to take us out to the park, someone always had to be with us. It's not like we could just go
very
out by
different.
ourselves.
Ah,
Very different.
you lost
Yes.
your freedom.
Yes, yes, definitely. You could think of it that way
You went to
now.
from the rural area to the city and you lost your freedom as a kid.
Yes, but I also think for me, I lost my childhood.
You
That
lost your
was that
childhood.
was the end of my childhood for sure.
That was the
For
end of your
sure.
childhood.
I always think of that time as like that's where my childhood ended,
At 10 years
because
old,
yes.
at 10
Yes.
years old, you lost your childhood.
So can I share real quick this experience that I had, I think like 2 weeks ago or something
Yeah.
like that? I went to the post office and I was waiting in line, and out of nowhere, I noticed this. There was this family, mom, dad, and then two, I want to say, toddlers, and then this girl. I want to say she's like, I don't know, 10 years old, 11 years old. And so this is where I really noticed her, because when it was her family's turn to get to the counter and talk to the post office employee, she was the one who spoke for her family. So she was asking questions about, they needed forms to apply for their passport or something like that. And so she was the one asking those questions. And that like really resonated with me. I was like, it really caught my attention. And I was like, it almost made me a little emotional because I felt like proud of her, but I also felt I sympathized with her because I feel like, oh, okay, you have to do what I had to do at your age. That's why I'm saying you kind of lose that sense of childhood. You're not out there playing with the kids the way you used to, kind of careless. All of a sudden, these cares and concerns are introduced in your life, and you have no control over it, really, because you love your mom and you love your dad. And when they need you to go with them to the doctors or go with them to the lawyer's appointment or go with them to the supermarket because they don't understand what's being said or whatever, then you do that and you don't ask questions, you know. And I remember being in sixth grade in Sweden, and I had to be excused several times a week. I had this amazing teacher, like incredible teacher, and she totally understood my situation. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Sometimes I may be late because I may have to go and make a phone call from my parents to the lawyer's office or maybe the doctor's office or whatever it was, you know? And so that's what I mean when I say you lose your childhood, you know? Not sure why, but I can't hear you. Not sure why. Okay, there you are.
Sorry, I had it on mute.
No worries.
So to clarify, you're saying in sixth grade you had to translate Swedish for your parents for doctors, lawyers,
Immigration.
immigration, and grocery store, any daily thing. Your Swedish is good enough at sixth grade that you can do this.
Yes, I mean, it's way better than my parents, that's for
Okay.
sure.
So
Because remember,
hold
we
on
and
one hold on
sure,
one
sure,
sec.
not a problem at all.
So we are back. Do you remember what you were saying? You were saying that you had to translate Swedish at sixth grade. And that's really impressive because sixth grade is what, 12 years old? So you'd
Something
been there
like
a
that.
year and you'd already learned enough to talk to a doctor or talk to a grocery clerk.
I would say maybe 13 in my
Oh,
case, because I had
gotcha.
to like repeat. Anyway, it was a bit complicated with schooling because when we applied for political asylum in Sweden. And so what happens? You become basically a political refugee. Now that you are a refugee, you can't go to regular school with regular kids. Instead, you just go to this like refugee school, which is basically like intensive language learning. Honestly, that's what I
Okay.
would call it, you
Gotcha. That
know?
makes sense.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
All right. Well, so here's there's something I haven't asked you,
Mhm.
which I think a lot of people would be interested to know, which is how are you feeling, your emotions when your childhood, your delightful, charming childhood is suddenly taken from you. How did you feel? Did you feel afraid, scared, angry? Um, do you
So,
depressed, sad?
So I think you're asking a really good question. And I think the best answer to that question is I don't think you are feeling anything as it's happening. You are
Trauma.
just really confused and you're like,
It's traumatic.
okay, what's going on? But
Yeah.
really, what's happening? A bunch of trauma is accruing that's gonna get back at you around your teenager years. That's basically what happened to me. And so
Did you ever
all
go
of,
to therapy at
oh
all?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
that's
you're speaking in a way that you're very plugged in. You have self-awareness of what's happening. Okay,
oh, for sure, for
gotcha.
sure.
Okay.
And it's so amazing because in Sweden, they offered therapy to children of like refugee children or children who had experienced war or some type of political unrest in some way. And I always, whenever this comes up in terms of former Yugoslavia, I always want to be very clear. I think former Yugoslavia as a whole suffered in different ways because of these political conflicts that went on. But
Yeah.
we have to be very realistic and fair and say that Bosnia and Croatia definitely stand out because they were the ones who experienced, killings and bombings and rape and all kinds of horrendous things and crimes that come with an actual real war. So I always kind of want to emphasize that because I think it's really, really important. I mean, in Bosnia, they had these camps, where they were starving people and I mean, horrendous, horrific situations. So, with that
Yeah.
said, I think that everyone in former Yugoslavia experienced some type of trauma in one way or
Oh,
another
absolutely.
because it was a very uncomfortable
Yes.
interruption of regular life,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
So that separation, that very early separation from my family, left its
Absolutely.
how do I say, the scars, I don't know if I
When
can
did you
use
become
scars.
aware of those scars? Well, let me, first of all, can I ask you, what type of therapy did you go through? Was it a group therapy? Was it individual
Individual,
psychotherapy? Individual?
individual.
Okay, gotcha. And
And it was
how long did you go through that?
in high school, actually,
Mhm.
throughout high school, which was a nice beginning to kind of start dealing with some of that trauma. But
Was it
later
years
on,
or was it months?
it
How
was,
long?
I would say, maybe 2, 3 years
Two or
of high
three years.
school, if
Okay.
I remember correctly.
Did you
Yeah.
have a good
Uh-huh.
therapist? Did you have the same
Amazing,
therapist?
amazing
One
therapist. She was
therapist?
amazing. Yes.
Okay.
She was amazing. Yes. She was
And it was
very,
a
very
woman?
helpful.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
hmm
Amazing therapist. Great. Well, that's probably why you were able to process and have such a handle on being able to even describe it, because it's very traumatic what you went through, and incredibly traumatic for a young kid to go through that, and to the fact that you haven't blocked it all out and well, not all of it, but you're able to articulate it so well, and you seem to have such a command of not only the details of the narration, but what it means for you. And so, yeah, you have a lot of, it's very impressive.
And you're right. It was a very challenging time. It was a very difficult time. But had I not gone through that, I wouldn't be who I am today. That's a fact.
Do you feel
So,
like you have had some healing from that trauma?
you know, the word healing is to me, the way things are today is triggering in and of itself, because I feel like in America today, it's such a trend, like, oh, I'm healing, and oh, we're healing, So
It's a
that
religious
word,
word.
maybe jokingly, I can say that word in and of itself is triggering, because it's like,
Okay.
okay, what are
Gotcha.
we healing from today?
Triggering
What's the
word.
healing, But, um, I think I have I have gotten the help that I've needed. I've gotten the help to process what happened, for sure. However, um, I also had to go through certain things, such as education, in later on in my adult life, to really make sense of a lot of things that are a big part of my life. So
Mhm.
I think a mix of everything
Okay.
helped me to
That's
overcome all those things and actually look back at it today as something that's made me who I am, that's made me stronger, that's made me a better person, a more appreciative person, and all of that. So
so you're in Sweden after Czechoslovakia. You went right from Czechoslovakia to Sweden.
Mhm,
Okay. What was
mhm.
that like for you?
Well, here's the first memory that comes to mind. um, we are at the train station. So my mom, my dad, my two brothers, two sisters, and then the youngest sister being like what, 8 months old at this point. So she's a baby. And we are at the
You're the
train.
oldest? You're the oldest kid?
I'm the oldest, yes.
That's a lot of pressure for you.
Mhm.
Lot of pressure.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. And so, we're at this train station, and I remember, so we're at the train station in Malmö, which is basically a city in southern Sweden. So we're headed to Stockholm, the capital city of Stockholm. I'm sorry, the capital city of Sweden, which is north. So we're waiting to catch this train at this train station in Malmö. And I remember there was a guy there waiting, or I don't know, maybe he was hanging out with his friends. But anyway, he was like a punk rocker, you know? So he had his hair, he was completely shaved around here. And then he had this like kind of like huge mohawk thing, you know, in the middle of his head. And then he had these like leather clothes and these like boots. And he was tatted up and had some earrings. And I'm just giving you this vivid description because
Welcome to Sweden.
obviously that was a huge culture shock for my dad. And I will
You didn't
forever
have
remember.
that in Montenegro?
Oh,
You didn't have that
well,
at Tuzi?
come on. Oh my God, no way. Decency was such an important aspect. Like you must carry yourself in a certain way, you must behave in a certain way, you must speak to people in a certain way. And so that was obviously out of the question, you know. Now, so I remember hearing my dad make that comment to my mom, almost immediately regretting that he had chosen Sweden as a
Oh, that's
country.
funny.
You know, so there
Wow.
it is. That culture shock has
Yeah.
arrived, and right
Uh-huh.
away, I imagine my dad was probably overwhelmed with fear. Like, oh my God, what does this mean for my kids? How are
Right.
we going to be able to raise our kids in this country?
Yes.
What kind of a lifestyle do these people live?
Hmm.
You know, that kind of stuff, right? So I remember that specifically, you know,
That's
as
interesting.
mhm.
Now, Samara, we have gotten this far without mentioning religion at all.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting? Um, Tell us about the religious background of the place that you grew up in, and how are you processing that, this whole thing
Sure.
in religious
So
terms?
So I was born into a Muslim family. So my grandmother and my grandfather, uh, my basically my whole family on my dad's side are Muslims, and they practiced Islam growing up. Well, how, in which way? Well, you know, they would go to the mosque, they would take us to the mosque sometimes. We would,
Everybody in that town was Muslim, or
well, not quite, because you have this division between Albanian Muslims and then Albanian Catholics. So, for example, many of our neighbors were Albanian Catholics. So, you know, we that's the religion that my first introduction to religion, like Islam and then Catholicism through my neighbors. However, my mom's side of the family, Christian Orthodox, some of them.
was your mom Christian?
My no, my mom's dad. So my mom's mom, originally Christian Orthodox, but then converted to Islam because she married my grandfather, who was Muslim. So my mom grew up also with the Muslim religion, sort of mixed with Christian Orthodox because of her mom's side of the family, who were still and who still are, you know, Christian Orthodox, practicing that religion. So
So
yeah.
your grandfather grew up Muslim. Your
Mhm.
grandfather on your
On
mom's
my
side.
dad's side, on my dad's side.
Okay, hold on
Mhm.
a sec. I'm missing something here. I have your mom's mom con, was Christian Orthodox, but converted by marrying a Muslim.
Yes, that's right.
So
Converted to Islam.
when
Mhm.
she married, that's your mom's dad, right?
That's right.
Okay,
Mhm.
so your mom's dad is grew up Muslim,
I believe
or was
so.
he a
Yes,
convert? Okay.
I believe so.
Now
Yes.
that's interesting. How did they meet and how did they get married if they're so different culturally?
Well, I don't, to be honest, I don't know exactly how they met. My dad has told me this story several times. I don't remember the details, but they did meet, maybe, I want to say maybe in Kosovo. I'm not sure, to be honest with
Okay.
you, but yeah. So,
Well,
mhm.
okay. And then on your dad's side, that's all solid Muslim. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Solid
yes, for
Muslim. Okay.
sure, for sure.
Going back generations. Going back how
Yeah,
long?
yeah, I would think so. Probably a few generations.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's hard to know, huh?
Hard to know for me. You have people who are like really good with these details. I don't know exactly these things, to be honest.
Interesting. Did you ever know your mom's mom? Did you know your grandma?
Yes,
Did
yes,
she ever
yes.
talk about Christianity, growing up Christian, so that you
No,
knew what it was?
no, I don't know. I don't think so.
Never talked about it?
But I was aware of it because my
She didn't
mom's
give you secret
side.
teachings on the Trinity late,
No,
in the corner?
no,
Okay.
no. But my mom's side of the family, I was aware of it because whenever I would go to visit my grandma, sometimes I would see her sister who was really, really nice. And I remember just knowing that they practice a different religion. I just knew
Gotcha.
that. Mhm.
Okay. Well, so how are you making sense of things? Did you have a Muslim perspective, or did you feel like, or was that not quite grown up in you? Did you?
No, for sure, for
Okay.
sure. Growing up, like during my childhood, the time that I spent in my village, it's like, yes, I'm Muslim. Yes, we practice Islam. There was no doubt in my mind
You believe
about
in
that.
God, right? You would say you
Yes,
believe in God.
yes,
Okay.
for sure. I believe in God hardcore. I think God is responsible for everything in this world. I think God is the Almighty. You don't question God, you pray to God, that kind of stuff. For sure. For sure.
Did you read the Quran, or was it read in the home?
Well, we had a Quran in the home for sure, and I did not read it
Was it in
per
Arabic, or was it
se.
in your language?
No, I mean, we had the Arabic version and then we had the translated or the translation as well. And then also going to the mosque, the imam would kind of teach you things from the Quran and things like that. And so,
How many times did you go to the mosque? Was it every week, once a week, twice a week?
you know what? I went to this like,
Only on
I,
Easter?
I want to
Just kidding.
say, I want to say I went to this, let's say, I don't know, religious school once a week. I think it was on Sundays or Fridays, maybe it was, where we would just like practice reading things from the Quran and just kind of teaching your kids about the religion, that kind of stuff, once a week for a little while, I think. But then my aunts would take me to the mosque sometimes during Ramadan. I think during Ramadan, I went like every night, that kind of stuff. And but speaking of Ramadan, that's another amazing experience that I had as a child because, everybody was fasting together and then we would break fast together. And the kids were so excited because there was so much food and all these goodies and candy and cookies. And so that's also
And
like,
you break the fast at night, right? When the sun goes down?
yes, and then you see the lights go on because there's a church in the village, and then there's also a mosque in the village. So the lights would turn on at the top of the mosque, and that's what you would see. And so us kids would just run to tell everybody, "You can break the fast. You can break the fast." And so those are also wonderful memories that I have from my childhood during Ramadan time.
And that's a month long, right? In
Yes.
November, something like that.
Well, I think it was different times, different
Different
for
times.
every year. It's a different month. I think something like that.
Did you have any feelings of hostility toward the church or people that went to the church?
Look. There was a division between the two for sure. One that I noticed much more later on when as a teenager, when we would go back and visit back home. But I think generally speaking, going back to the whole village life, I would say these families just knew each other. They had a history together. And I think there was a general sense of respect for each other. So, to give you an example, our neighbors, when it was, Easter, they would color a bunch of eggs or whatever, and they would bring us a bunch of boiled eggs, colored boiled eggs. And I remember loving that. I remember being super excited about that. And I remember, us having to congratulate them, like, hey, happy Easter, or happy this, happy that. So there was always, in my experience, when I was there as a little kid, there was that sense of respect, like they respect ours, we respect theirs, and that's that,
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
in terms of marriage, in terms of that kind of stuff, you do not mix. I mean, the message was
No
very
marriage
clear.
mixing.
No, absolutely not. No marriage mixing. You do not, you
That's why
know.
it's interesting about your mom's mom and your
Mhm.
mom's dad to me.
Yeah, but they were from the bigger city, remember?
Ah, okay.
So
So there's mixing
life
in the
is
city.
always different in the big city.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Well, uh, I should ask you a little bit about Ramadan. What's the meaning of Ramadan? Why is there a fast for a month? Did you feel like you understood that as a kid? Was that explained to
Not
you?
not really. I mean, to tell you the truth, not really. I just remembered that, yeah, you fast. And I mean, at the time as a kid, I did not fast. It was way too early to start fasting. But sometimes the adults would challenge us, like, hey guys, you should try one day. If you can do it one
So
day,
you
that's
didn't
good for
fast. I
you.
gotcha.
So, sometimes we'd have these things with the friends, like, oh, let's fast tomorrow. Yeah,
So
let's do it.
it's not like food was withheld for you for no
No, no,
reason.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no way, no
That
way,
you
no.
understood anyway. Okay,
No.
interesting. So the adults were saying, we're doing this. You can try it if you want, try it out, something like that.
Yes,
Is that
yes,
fair to
yes.
say?
Hmm.
Okay. I
Hmm.
think it's helpful to have that background. Of course, a
But
lot of Christian kids don't understand what the deal is with the colored boiled eggs on Easter either, and that's never explained to them. So I'm not
mhm,
sure if you asked. I had that when I was a kid, but I don't think I could have explained it, and I'm
mhm.
not even really sure I can explain the colored eggs
Uh,
today.
I honestly never asked anything about it, but I just always thought the eggs were so delicious. Like, I just
Yeah,
remember the way
kind of
they
fun to
would
look at them.
boil these eggs, and then like you just got so many of them. There was like a
Hmm.
bucket of eggs. I
Was it
remember
ever
that.
chocolate as well or anything? Was that too
No,
fancy?
no, actually not that I remember. It was always boiled eggs.
And would you have salt on the eggs as well? That's what we do,
Yeah, we would. We
or
would.
just the regular eggs.
I
Did you
just
not normally
remember.
boil your eggs?
Um, sure, we would, but I just remember the way they would boil their eggs. It was just boiled to perfection. That's how I remember it. Like, it was just
Boiled to
such a
perfection.
delicious egg. I remember it exactly like that. So that's something that I was really excited about. Like, yes,
Wow.
Easter, we're getting eggs, and so
So
you
as a
know.
Muslim, you were excited about Easter because the food was really good.
Yes, for sure. For
Okay.
sure. I remember that because our neighbors were so amazing, and they would bring eggs to us, or if we went to their house to congratulate, and they would just give us eggs. And so, yeah, that's how I remember it.
Now you have this view, right? And then your childhood ends at 10. You're in Czechoslovakia. It's very confusing. You get to Sweden. Are you still a Muslim in your heart and your mind? How are you praying? Are you asking God what is the meaning of this? What's
Uh,
that like for you?
for sure, I am still Muslim. And that's why what I said earlier, certain things in school would upset me.
Oh, okay.
But
So
then
back
your
to Sweden.
class helped me understand much better why those things upset me, because
Oh,
in Sweden it wasn't meant to upset me. It was just a whole new way of looking at things. And instead of just telling you, yes, God did this, and God is the Almighty, and God blah blah blah, it was like, oh, so how many gods are there? Is there more than one God? Which God is right? Which God is right? It was just like these curious questions that were absolutely not meant to offend me, or not meant to hurt me or whatever. But to me, it was just like this continuation of this separation, this identity that I had, and that was actually really comfortable as a kid, because no one ever questioned anything. No one ever asked these uncomfortable questions that, well, later on, I kind of thought of them as uncomfortable questions, because they were uncomfortable, because I had no idea how to answer those questions.
yeah, yeah.
So to a certain extent, they make you feel embarrassed. They make you feel like you don't have all the answers, which was a
Mhm.
whole new concept to me. For some reason, I just always thought I had the answers because of the way religion was explained to me as a kid.
Mhm.
So I thought that was uncomfortable in Sweden, but then later on, I learned to really, really appreciate that part as well, where it's like, okay, well, you're challenged to look at new things and look at it from a different perspective. And
How
yeah,
much later on did you come to appreciate that?
probably around my time at LMU.
Okay.
So much, much later.
Tell
Um,
us how you went from Sweden to LMU
so
and what are the
I
ages and all that.
So I stayed in Sweden until I was done with high school. I graduated from high school. And so then the question was, okay, what do I do now? Do I continue with school? It wasn't even do I continue with school because I always knew that I wanted to continue with school. Generally speaking, I always loved school. I think I was always really curious and really wanted to learn and enjoyed learning. But the way learning was presented to me
Was
during
this in
different,
Stockholm?
no, a small town about an hour and a half outside of Stockholm or away from Stockholm,
What's that? What's the town called?
Hieby.
Can you spell it for us?
H,
Mhm.
so Heby, Hieby.
Heby.
Mhm,
Okay, I would never have known how to say that. I'm glad you said
mhm,
it for us.
mhm.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No problem, no problem. So,
Did you like that town? Was it a happy childhood
well,
or teenage years?
it was. So remember, when we arrived to Sweden, we applied for political asylum, and so what that meant, it meant moving several times to different places because you were a refugee, and so,
Okay, so
okay,
you
you
were a
stay
refugee
here.
this whole time.
Yes. So you stay here for 2 weeks and then you move to another place and you stay there for 3 weeks. You're kind of
Oh,
moved around
wow.
until some type of a more permanent place is available for you, so that you can wait for a final decision, immigration decision. Like, are you going to be able to stay in Sweden? Or are you not going to be able to stay in Sweden? Does
Is
that
this
make
the
sense?
time when you mentioned to me in person that you had stayed at a church for like 6 months? Was that during this
Yes.
time?
Yes. Actually, it wasn't during this time, but it was as a result of this time
Oh, okay.
because while we were waiting in the refugee camps for a decision, okay, are you going to be able to stay in Sweden? Are you not going to be able to stay in Sweden? We finally got that decision, and the decision was no, you cannot stay in Sweden. You have to
How
go back to your country.
how many years was this that you had been in Sweden?
I would say close to 3 years.
3 years.
Close to
So,
3 years.
okay, I'm doing the math. Hold on. You're 11 when you get there or 10? You're
I'm
still
10.
10.
Yes, I'm 10 when we get to
So you're
Sweden.
13 when
So
the
I'm
decision
13.
comes down.
Yes. Hmm.
The decision of the Swedish officials, 13 years old. What city are you in when this happens? Do you remember?
Yes, a city called Hallstahammar.
Okay.
That's gonna be a bit more Hallstahammar. That's where we were at. We were waiting for the decision.
And the
Hallstahammar.
decision was you are denied refugee status
Yes. So
and
you
you
are.
have to go
Yes.
back. And
Yes.
so for 3 years, you had been moving every couple weeks. Did I hear that right?
Well, I would say for the first year or so, no, no, no. For the first, let's say 6 months, we were moving quite frequently because remember, this is the early 90s and there's like an influx, huge influx of refugees coming into Sweden from many different parts of the world, not just former Yugoslavia, but predominantly from former Yugoslavia. So Sweden is opening up their doors to all these people who need help. but it's like you're opening up the doors, but you don't exactly know, okay, where can we house these people? How can we house them? So as you're figuring this out, we're staying at hotels for a few weeks. And then we're staying at these, to me, they looked like summer camp houses or whatever, and so we're staying there. And then from there, we're moved to this other hotel. And so
Okay, so these are
yeah,
hotels, but you used the
exactly.
word refugee camp earlier. So what do you mean by refugee camp?
Because they were referred to as refugee camps.
The
Like
hotels.
yeah, in Sweden, in
Okay.
Swedish, it was like flyktingförläggningar. It was like
That actually
Sweden.
helps that you said
Yeah.
that word. Just kidding. I don't know what.
so
It's just so funny that
so
I would
that's the
know that
name.
word.
That's the name that I would hear. Like,
Gotcha.
okay,
What's the word
refugee
again?
camps. Flyktingförläggningar.
See,
Uh-huh.
everybody, isn't that clear? Now that
Yes.
you know that word.
Yes.
Great.
But
Flickney
but honestly,
Felegnias.
thinking back to this city, Hallstahammar, that's where we kind of were able to settle down a little bit more because we actually lived in an apartment. We were going to school. There were some like more
Okay.
normalcy to our life. I would say we were making friends. We could play outside the building. It was a really nice
Oh,
time.
you
Really
could play
nice time.
outside the building. Wow, that's great.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
Play outside. No kidnapping.
No kidnapping, no.
Okay.
So we could play outside, and you know, we got to know other kids from the neighboring refugee camp. We were playing with kids from different countries, different nationalities. That was my first introduction to like all these different people from different countries, different religions, different languages, different
Gotcha.
cultures.
Okay. Now
So
you're 13. The decision comes down. What's the reaction of your parents? Are they freaked out? Are you what?
we're all freaked out. I remember
Okay.
coming home and my mom was crying, and it's like, okay, now what? And
Another
that's why,
another traumatic event. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I'm mentioning the city as a really nice city, Hallstahammar, because like I said, it kind of gave us some stability, honestly. Like we actually had an apartment that we were living in. We had kind of fixed up the apartment a little bit. There was that sense of home when you
Yeah.
got home. Like there was that home cooked meal. We were going to school. My parents were making friends. I mean, that was a really nice time. And so you come home. I came home from school on a Friday, I remember, and there was that sense of tension at home. I remember tension as in like something's wrong,
Yeah.
like something's going on.
Right.
And so my mom's crying, and it's like, oh my God, what? Okay, well, we have to go back on Monday. So we had received the rejection letter and also like 7 tickets, like ready to go. So we were
Mhm.
already booked to go on Monday.
To
So
fly to
to
back
fly
home.
back to
Oh
Montenegro.
my
Yes.
gosh. And
And
you're
so
thinking, no, we're not doing that.
my dad was like, no way, we're not going back, because the situation was getting worse and worse in former Yugoslavia,
Mhm.
and although there wasn't necessarily a boiling war in Montenegro, there was that big question, like, is Montenegro going to be the next place? Because no one
Mhm.
could really tell you that with certainty at the time.
Mhm.
Now, what do we do that same night? And I remember that night so vividly, because all these people came over to say bye. They wanted to say bye to us, but also like
So
we had
sad.
all these things, we had a nice carpet. We had all these like furniture things that we were just giving away to everyone. It's like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
take it, take it, take it. Because we left that same night. Our cousins came from Stockholm, picked us up, and that's when we went officially into hiding. That's
Man,
when
you
we
have a
went.
lot of cousins, and it's a good
Yeah.
thing you have a lot of cousins, man. Holy cow.
Oh yeah, I
I
have
wish I had
so
that many
many
cousins.
cousins. So many cousins. So my cousins came and picked us up.
These are good cousins too. They're not the bad cousins.
Amazing cousins. Yes, wonderful. We are super close
Cousins.
to this day. I'm close to their with their kids, and now their kids. And so yeah, they're amazing. They're
Oh
awesome.
man. Okay, so they come from Stockholm.
They come from Stockholm, pick us up, and then So we leave that same night. And so how do you translate this? You translate it like this: the immigration has sent you a clear letter and a clear statement. You cannot stay here anymore. You need to go back by Monday. But what you're saying is, you're saying, I don't agree with your decision. And so I'm just going to go into hiding, which technically is against the law. It is illegal technically, but it was quite common at that time for many refugee families to do that, just to kind of disappear overnight and go into hiding. So that's what we did. We just went to stay with our cousins. And then this new kind of era of like, okay, you can't go out too much now, because at the time it was pretty common for the Swedish government to just like allow the police to kind of, they could have a picture of you or whatever. Well, this family is in hiding. They need to be deported. So I don't know, if you see someone that resembles them, or if someone reports them or whatever, you could, you could just arrest them or whatever. So I
Right.
remember, honestly, and I should be very clear on that. Who knows? Maybe that was just like a myth that was spread around other refugees who were in hiding in the camps. I don't know. I don't know if that was really true or not, but that was instilled in my head. And so I remember not wanting to go out and play during the day, although we did, but I didn't like it because I was always like, police
Right.
cars, oh my God, police
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of another kind of really, let's say, traumatic experience, in
Yeah.
the sense that, again, this sense of comfort and some type of stability was
Yeah.
gone. And so I
Yeah.
couldn't go to school anymore either.
How long did that last?
How long did that last? About a year, I would say. About a year.
What's your living situation for this year?
So we're staying at my cousin's house, one bedroom apartment. Like we're all sleeping on
Back
the
to one
floor.
bedroom. Okay.
We're all sleeping on the floor in the living room. Like,
My
it's just
goodness.
not really the best living situation.
Surprised you don't
But
get triggered as soon as you see a one bedroom, any one bedroom anywhere. You don't get triggered and go into like convulsions.
that's why I'm telling you this word triggered. I mean,
Yeah.
we need to have another
Yeah.
podcast and just talk about that word.
Yes. Yeah. Because my guess is that these people on campus that are triggered for critical thinking,
Oh
you
my
have some
God.
thoughts about that, right?
May I roll my eyes, please?
Wow.
Um, so yeah,
God bless you.
that's why I'm telling you, like, had I not gone
Yes.
through all these experiences, I wouldn't be able to look at these people today and literally, genuinely, powerfully roll my eyes and just be like, dude, you're
You're talking
so
about in America
delusional.
on the college
Yes, you're
campuses. Yeah.
so delusional. You have
So
no idea
delusional.
what you're talking about. So, but anyway, going
Yeah.
back to this, so we're staying at my cousin's, and again, there's this complicated living situation because we're sleeping in the living room and there's like no room. And my cousins were super nice, like they were so welcoming and everything.
Wow.
But
And they're living
un,
in there too? The same
yeah, of
apartment?
course, they're living there with their families.
How many people are in this apartment?
So it's my cousin with her husband and two kids, and then my mom and dad and five kids. So
Seven.
it's
So 11
seven,
people.
11 people, yes.
Okay.
And, you know, another cousin
And
of
you can't
mine,
go out and play.
preferably
Well,
not.
well, when you
Usually,
see the police, you have to run, basically.
yeah. So we'd prefer to go like in the evening. For some reason, we just felt safe. It was felt safer, like go in the evening, don't go during the day. Who knows? Maybe this idea made us feel like, okay, we are less visible in the evening, or maybe they won't pay as much attention or something like that. I don't know. But I remember feeling really scared, honestly, like really nervous about being out there and playing with kids. And oh, you're kind of always on your toes about it. But another cousin of mine introduced my parents to this amazing lawyer. And, in the process, maybe it was the lawyer who introduced my parents to this priest in Sweden, who actually said, you know what? You guys can come and stay at this church. And so we did. Now, it sounds like, oh God, they were living in the middle of a church. But let me just explain. Yes, it was a church for sure in a small town in Sweden, but there was kind of a housing area attached to the church. So I had access to that church every single day. In fact, there was a piano that they would play every Sunday. And so I could just go and sit there every day during the week because there was no one else there. Worship was every Sunday. So yeah, this little housing area that they gave to us was actually part of the church. So just to kind of be clear, so that I don't make it seem like, oh, we
Okay.
lived in a church, like on the benches, no. There
Gotcha.
was a living room, there was a kitchen, and then upstairs there were 2 rooms. So there was plenty of space for us to sleep and cook and eat. And then that priest lived like just one, I don't know how to say, like one level above us. Like his house was also part of that church. And he lived there with his 3 kids and his wife. And when I tell you that they were incredibly, amazingly kind people, like honestly, I'm not exaggerating. Like that was the beginning of an amazing friendship. They were coming over all the time and we were going to their house all the time. And I remember his kids had Super Nintendo. And so that was like a big deal. Like, yeah, let's go play Super Nintendo. So he was
Wow.
really happy because his kids also had friends and we had friends. So we were hanging out all the time with the kids, with his kids. They were coming over, we were going over. And so that was a really, really nice experience. Like I really loved those people. So now,
How long were you in the church for?
for maybe a couple of months, let's say 6, 7 months, maybe something like that.
Lived in the church for 6, 7 months. Okay.
And
And did
by
you
the
feel
way,
safe there? You
oh my
felt safe?
God, beyond safe, beyond safe. I felt so, oh, it was amazing.
No,
And
no
by the
cops coming and looking for you?
Well, that was the part that was always a bit scary because I was still in the back of my mind. I don't want to go out too much during the day. And then I always felt like because it was wintertime, there was a lot of snow. I always felt like you stood out so much because there was so much snow around you and everything was white around you. So I remember having that fear like, oh my God, maybe I will be extra recognizable or something because everything was so visible. I felt like, I
Gotcha.
don't know if that makes
Okay.
sense, but
Interesting.
um so
How did you get
so
food? Who did the
well, exactly. So it's like, well, how did you guys get food? The first thing that this priest said to my mom and dad was like, don't worry about money, don't worry about food, don't worry about, being hungry or anything. You guys just ask me and we will provide. And so every single Sunday, they were collecting money for us in church. Can you believe that? Every single
so
Sunday they
everybody
would,
knew you were there?
oh, yes, all these church goers, I will always remember them as some of the most amazing, kind, wonderful people that I've ever met in Sweden.
What was
And
the name of the church? Do you remember?
oh my God, that's a good question. I don't
Have
remember
you
the
ever been
name
back to
of the
visit?
church. I have not. My siblings have, but
Do you know what
God
kind
will.
of church it was? Protestant, Catholic?
Oh, Protestant, I
It was
believe.
Protestant.
Protestant, I think
Any,
so.
but you don't remember what the name of it was?
No, but my siblings and I, God willingly, that's part of our plan. As soon as we get together, all of us in Sweden, we want to do like maybe a 3, 4 day thing where we drive to all these cities where we were living.
Yeah, you should.
Because
What
my brother does like documentaries and stuff. He likes to make documentaries. So we were thinking to maybe just make like a for ourselves, just some kind of documentary of all these like old spots where we used to live. Because I haven't been there in years, in
I
years.
I've made a
Mhm.
note to myself in my notes that it's probably a Lutheran church because of Lutheran, but it's not necessarily the case, obviously, because there's lots of history here. But if it's a Protestant church, it's probably Lutheran in Sweden. Did they have Bibles in the church?
Mhm.
And were there hymnals? Do you know
And
what those
oh
are?
yeah, yeah, of course, they were singing. And then,
Did they read the Bible in church?
of course, actually, I was reading the Bible for them because
Oh,
remember, this is a time when we are in hiding. We are not going to school. So you are this kid who has the whole day available, but it's like, what do? You can't go to school. You shouldn't really go outside and play too much during the day.
yeah.
So I mean, I needed to kind of occupy myself somehow, and I quickly became friends with all these churchgoers. They were really old people, like they were in their 70s, 80s, some of them in their 60s, but they were the kindest people. They really reminded me of everyone in my village, because they were so kind, and I almost
How
felt
many
like that
people
was.
were in the church during a Sunday? Do you remember? Was it
Oh,
packed? Was the
I
whole
don't
thing?
know if it was packed, but maybe
Okay.
there were 50, 60, 70 people,
Were they
something like
all
that.
older?
I would say older for sure. Not too
Okay.
many young people I don't
Gotcha.
remember seeing,
Hmm.
you
That
know.
that says I can predict what the church is probably like. Okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. Wow, that's
And
interesting. Lots of interesting stuff. And you're at what age at this time?
what,
You're
14 maybe?
14.
13,
Okay.
14, something like that,
During
I
the
would
time
say.
of the church. And what
Mhm.
city was it in?
The name of this city was Gniesta. So it's Gnesta, Gniesta, Gniesta,
Gnesta.
Sta. Gniesta.
And that's the town with the church.
Hmm.
Is it a small town?
Small town,
Small
really
town.
cozy small town, really nice.
Okay.
So I would every Tuesday they had like some kind of Bible get together, and then the ladies would kind of do activities, and it was just like a way for older people to get together. And I remember like loving
Wow.
Tuesdays because it was so cozy, like getting together with them and just reading for them and helping them out. Maybe I felt like I was reconnected with all these, I don't know, my grandma, my grandpa, all these people that I grew up with in my village. It was
Your
just like
grandma was
cozy.
there?
No, 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 but I felt
Oh.
like
Oh, you
through
felt yeah,
them, I
I
felt like
got
I
you.
had
Okay.
the presence of my grandma and my grandpa,
Where
if that
where is
makes
your
sense.
grandma and grandpa at this time? Where are they
Well,
at?
I mean, they passed away years
Oh, they
ago.
passed away.
They passed away years ago, but they were living in the village until they passed away. So
And they passed away when you were not
we
in
were
the,
in
the city?
Sweden. Yes.
Oh,
We
so
were in
you couldn't
Sweden.
go to their funeral.
No, I could not go to their
Uh
funeral. My grandpa came to see us in Sweden, I think once or twice. He came to visit us twice, I think. And he also
and
came to visit us in Slovakia, actually.
these
And I'm
funerals, yeah, you have four grandparents, they all die when you're in Sweden?
Well, my
All right.
my mom's dad, I never met because he died way before my mom was even married or had kids. So I
Okay.
never met him. But my grandma, my mom's mom passed away while we were in Sweden. I didn't even get to see her, say a proper goodbye or anything like that. Whereas my dad's mom and dad, at least I got to see them again after we left and spend a little bit of
Gotcha.
time, so that was at least nice.
And then
Mhm.
they died
They
uh,
also died, yes.
when you were in Sweden?
Yes.
So you're in Sweden until you're 19 or 18?
Actually 20, because
Okay.
remember, due
So
to
you
the
lived as a
fact,
refugee for 6 years till 20?
no, 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 no. I
Okay,
lived
sorry.
as a refugee, I would say 3 years more or less. Let's say between 3 and 3.5 years, more or less.
So at 14 years old, you've been there for 4 years almost,
Mhm,
3.5.
mhm.
You're a refugee for how much longer?
So now we're in hiding. Remember,
In
we're in this
hiding, in
church, we're
hiding,
in
yeah.
hiding.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, there is this amnesty law, new amnesty law, that if you had entered Sweden prior to this and this year, prior to this and this date, if you had not committed any crimes or anything like that, you will automatically be given this amnesty. In other words, you will be granted permission to stay in Sweden legally. And so it
Mm,
just so happened that that amnesty applied to my family. And
okay.
so, we were back to the refugee camps again after church, because now you have to go to a refugee camp so that you can be properly processed and, get all the paperwork
How long does that take?
together. It took a couple of months for
Okay.
us, actually. And then we were given this apartment where we could live. And then I could start going to school with all the regular kids, studying regular subjects,
So at
you know.
15 years old,
Yes,
your life returns. Uh,
basically. So I'm like
and
basically the oldest kid in the class
you have
because everyone
stability.
else is younger, and I'm in
Okay.
6th grade.
From
So
the, oh,
that's,
wow.
yeah,
At 15 years old, you're in sixth grade?
yeah.
Wow. So you have, where, do you stay in the same town from 15 to 20, or do you move still?
15 to 20. No, we end up moving again because this
Wow.
city that was assigned to us wasn't necessarily the city where we wanted to live.
Mm.
So my dad ends up finding this like really small town. And so we end up moving there, and we never ever moved away from that town ever again. I
What
mean,
age were you when you moved to that town?
probably about 15,
Okay.
16,
Did you
something like
have
that,
about
14,
4
15,
year,
something
four
like
and a
that.
half years of stability in Sweden at
Yes,
that town?
yes, yes, yes.
What's the name
That's
of the
right.
town?
Hiaby. That's Hiaby.
Oh, okay. That's the one you already mentioned.
Heby. Mm-hmm. Hiaby.
Okay. So you have
Mm-hmm.
stability finally. You
Mm-hmm.
graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm.
You have an amazing life. I mean, I just, it's amazing to me the amount of experience that you have. I have notes and notes, and I've already talked to you about this, and I'm still taking notes. And, we've obviously talked many times, and I never get sick of hearing these stories. Um, can you, we're going to have you back on, I think. Is that okay?
Sure, sure. No problem.
Because
No
you have such a
problem.
rich life, and we haven't even got to America, and we haven't even got to your business. Can you tell us what your business is? What is your business and what do you do? You're an entrepreneur, right?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I let's say I own a small teaching company called Maverick Lingo, and
Wow. That's
I've
right up your alley.
been doing this for about 5 years now. And so, what I do is I teach languages, mostly English, but I don't just teach languages. That's why I don't really, when you promote yourself or whatever, I don't really promote myself as a teacher, but more so as a language coach, because I'm trying, I'm really applying all these life experiences that I've had as a way to motivate students to learn, especially English, because you never ever know when you might need it. And so, going back again to that conclusion, had I not gone through all these things, I would not be able to be the person that I am today. And I
Goodness.
would not be able to share
Yes.
these valuable experiences with other people, urging them and encouraging them to not victimize themselves, to
Mm,
not fall victim to your life experiences, but instead to gain as much strength and knowledge and wisdom from that experience and build yourself up from that. And if you are new in a country where, let's say, only English is spoken, then you must learn English. You must learn English. And sometimes as a society, we are afraid to say this because, oh God, I might be offending people by telling them that, oh, you know what? You live in the US, you must learn English, because I truly, genuinely believe there are so many people who come to the US from other countries who have so much to give. And I mean this genuinely, like who have so much to give. And so,
mm.
not to like toot my own horn, but I really think we need to have another podcast so we can kind of,
I
so that
agree.
people can better understand how I also got to these conclusions. And I also really, really want to talk in depth about what your class in particular did for me in terms of just becoming a much more individual thinker and just really getting to know myself better and becoming more grounded in who
Mhm.
I am as a person, which has been like, it has been a pillar in my life in every single aspect, like knowing who I am, knowing what I believe in, knowing what's important, knowing what's just background noise. And, you know, all those things are really important to get into. But, you are shaped by all these experiences. How
Mhm.
can you not be? How can
Yeah.
you not be? And I actually have this very specific memory from LMU. I met
Mm.
this, I actually became friends with this really young LMU student. I think she was like 18 or 19 when I met her. And she was such a nice person, but she was also very kind of adrift and lost and was constantly going through these like ups and downs. And I'll never forget. She said this to me one day. She was like, "Hey, Sam, do you want to like let's do this after school or blah blah blah? Let's go here." And I was just I that was the beginning of my like journey. I was like, "Nope, I have to study. I have exams next week. I want to be prepared and blah blah blah." So I'll never forget. She was like, "Oh my God, Samra, you're so intense." You're so intense. But I remember that not because she called me intense, but because I thought about it afterwards. I was like, of course I'm intense to her. I mean, we come from completely different backgrounds, we come from completely different life experiences. And so, me walking on LMU's ground was like, oh my God, I'm here. I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I made it. I can't
Mm.
believe there's a space available for me here. I'm just like this
Wow.
little girl from a village. So that's
Mm.
how I looked at LMU. And then she had a whole other perception of LMU. And that's when I learned and I realized that you have to take both perspectives into consideration. You can't be too quick to judge right away. But at the end of the day, there are some universal truths that I learned in your class. And we have to respect those universal truths. And it's like, you know what? When you're given opportunities, you have to take care of those opportunities. You have to be grateful. You have to work hard. You have to respect your teachers, your professors. You have to respect the knowledge that they have and that they could potentially share with you. I'm not saying now, oh yeah, look at your professor as like a lieutenant, don't speak back. Like, not at all.
Right.
But I was never made to feel that way anyway in any of my classes in the United States. I
Mm.
always felt like I could say whatever I wanted. I could think however I wanted. I never ever felt limited, never, honestly, wholeheartedly, genuinely, which is why at some point we also have to get into this whole like culture and, banning people and blah, 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 because I think there's so much can be said about that, honestly. I think that if you are firm in your beliefs, you don't have to be part of this whole cancel culture and it doesn't have to become like as dramatic as it has become, because I still believe with from the bottom of my heart that America is one of the greatest countries I've ever been to. And it's a country that's like offered me a home, like the first country in my life where I felt whole again, It sounds weird, but actually it's true, and again, we can
Wow.
get into that another time, like how that happened, why that happened, and but I never really felt completely whole in Sweden, although I loved Sweden and I was very grateful to Sweden. I never really felt completely whole. I felt like something was missing, like,
Mm.
I don't know. I miss my country so much. I miss my culture so much. I miss a certain way of interacting, all those things. And so that was something that I really longed for in Sweden. I was constantly like obsessing over my country and just like thinking about
Yeah.
all these amazing memories and blah, 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 blah. So when I finished high school, I was like, what do I do now? Where do I go now?
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up in Croatia. So I actually moved to Croatia and I lived
Wow.
there for 2 years. It just so happened that
Did
they
you go
had
back
this.
home? Did you go back to Montenegro during that
Well,
time?
well, Montenegro was only 2.5 hours away by bus. So I was super
Okay.
attracted to that. Like, oh my God, I can go to this American college in Croatia. Not really paying attention to what am I going to study? Do I even care about these subjects? Am I even interested in this? I was just totally driven by this idea of let me go to Croatia because I'll feel so close to Montenegro and like, let's see what that feels like, like, let's see what that feels like.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
The
anyway,
American college was called what?
ACMT was like American College of Management and Technology. So they are actually based in Rochester, New York, I think, or something like that. And but then they created this small version of that college in Croatia as a way to help Croatia kind of rebuild Croatia after the war, because one of their number one resources, income resources, is hospitality, hotels, hospitality, tourism. So that's what that college was focused on. And it could not have been any further away from my passion of studying, but whatever. I was there for 2 years and I guess that served its purpose, some type of a lesson in and of
Yeah.
itself as well. But
Right.
I was not supposed to go there for sure.
Was
I was
there a
not.
language issue there in Croatia? Could
No,
you
no, no.
understand everybody?
Of course, because remember,
Okay.
they speak Croatian, which is the same exact language as the language in Montenegro, but we just have a very different
They have a
accent.
different accent. Okay.
It's like American English and British English,
Oh,
maybe, or
okay.
I don't know, Southern
Yeah.
accent versus
Mhm.
California accent or something like that. Mhm.
You're 22, and what happens at 22? You,
Well, I am in Croatia now, I think, right? I'm in Croatia with
mhm.
with one of my best friends from Sweden. So we go there together.
Oh, that's good that you had a friend.
We got an apartment. My dad was thrilled that I was in Croatia because later on I understood that probably my dad was also hoping that, who knows, maybe in the future we could all just, the siblings could, maybe we could kind of establish ourselves somewhere closer to home or something. I don't know. and
Gotcha. That
and then
makes
my
sense.
dad's experience of Croatia was always super positive, such a good country, beautiful country, all these things. So anyway, I lived there for 2 years. I genuinely, I have no idea how I was able to stay in those classes because I mean, I was totally failing academically. I wasn't doing well at all.
You didn't care.
Just there was nothing to motivate me. Like I thought all those
Mm.
subjects were so boring. But
Were the
again,
classes in English?
the classes were in English. So I did
Wait,
really
how
well.
did you get English?
Well, I attended this high school in Sweden, which was about an hour, located an hour away from this small town, Hiabi, where we lived in. But that high school program offered everything in English. So I was like, oh my God, that's exactly where I want to go.
Gosh. So
So,
you went to high school in Sweden in English?
yes, I
Oh
studied,
my
all
gosh.
my classes were in English. The only one, obviously, that wasn't in English was Swedish, but all my other classes were in English.
Wow.
History, social studies,
Oh
religion,
my gosh.
geography, everything was in English. So even
Wow.
though I had to commute about an hour one way and an hour back by bus every day, I still was adamant about like, no, I want to go to that high school because I really want to learn English. I want to improve my English skills. And so it's almost as if subconsciously I was preparing myself for this
To go to
grand
Los Angeles.
arrival to the land of freedom. No, I'm just kidding, but to
Yeah, yeah.
America. So yeah, I was there for 3 years. I graduated from high school 3 years later. You go to Sweden in high school for 3 years, and I graduated. And then a few months later, I was in Croatia. So I think my high school teachers had like really high hopes, like, oh my God, I'm probably going to go to this amazing school and I'm going to do great things and blah, 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 because I just had this fantastic connection with all my teachers in high school. And I was a really good student in high school. I loved high school. But I think my choice of school was very impulsive. And I was really driven by this kind of old dream of possibly reconnecting with my home country
Mhm.
and who knows, maybe finding myself again,
Yeah.
because you are kind of cut into all these pieces, honestly, as a human being. You don't really know who you are at this point. You're
Right.
just like, do I belong here? Do I belong
Right.
there? Am I this? Am I that? And on top of it all, as we were going back to Montenegro at this point during the summer to visit family and friends,
Wow. What was that
I,
like?
well, it was amazing, but I definitely started to feel this kind of disconnect even with my culture slowly, because it's like, oh my God, I kind of forgot that it was like this and that it was like that. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. You can't
you
question
know,
authority. Yeah.
yep. So
Yeah.
then
Are
I
you still a
remember,
Muslim at this time? Because you're
I'm
20
just,
something.
at that time, while
Mhm.
I'm in high school, oh, for
What?
sure. I'm
Well, no,
like,
I mean in Croatia when you're going to Montenegro in the summer,
well, I think
Croatia.
so. I mean, yeah, I am Muslim, but I think I'm just like
Gotcha.
really confused in general. I have
Okay.
no idea what's
Fair
going
enough.
on.
Fair
But
enough.
but um
Fair enough.
but it's funny because I remember you assigning like this homework assignment at LMU. We had to
Me?
read.
I assigned homework? What?
We had to read about uh the cave. Yes, the cave.
Mhm.
When there are these
Plato?
three people in the cave, and
Mhm.
you know and for some
Yeah.
reason, I
That's
don't
in
remember
that's in
why.
Republic, Plato's Republic.
The Republic. Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes.
Book 7,
And
I
I
think it
don't
is.
remember why, but I was sitting in my car and I was reading. I was doing my homework, and I literally remember like crying while I was reading that because
You were crying in your
I
car at LMU
no, actually, it
in
was
Los
outside of
Angeles?
campus.
Okay.
I might have been waiting for someone, or maybe I was waiting for an appointment or something. I don't know,
I
but I
made you
just kind of,
cry?
and I just felt so emotional by reading that because I could, it's almost as if I could, there were so many points that I was able to connect to that particular story, points from my own personal life. And I'm only mentioning this now because it made perfect sense to me why going back to Montenegro during these summers, I would feel so conflicted. I would feel like, oh my
Mm,
God, what the hell happened? Like, this used to be my
right.
home. This used to be that place of comfort. Everything made sense here. And it doesn't make sense anymore. Not everything is crystal clear. I'm noticing
Mm,
things in the culture now that I don't necessarily like, or that I don't necessarily support, or that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with. And so I was like super conflicted between Sweden and my
yeah.
country and Swedish culture and my culture. And so it made a lot of sense by reading that assignment. I was like, oh my God, yes. I was that person that exited the cave and then things were super
Wow.
uncomfortable. And then going back to the cave again was equally uncomfortable because guess what? You're no longer the same person, you know? And that's why I think this culture of censoring and not allowing people to be different today and not encouraging people to be different and have different opinions from you and lifestyles from you and all of that is not good. It's not good. It's
Mm.
really not good. How
You-
can I learn from you if I can't even talk to you as a human being?
You're saying that
How
reminds you of how the parts of your childhood that you've come to now criticize as an adult,
Yeah, and
the
also,
parts that were from the small town. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and also just in my opinion, the summary and the conclusion of that story of the cave, it's like,
Right.
you're not your life isn't fully fulfilled when you're sitting there in that cave, but it's also not going to be fully fulfilled when you're outside of that cave.
Mm.
In fact, your life is going to be fully fulfilled when you are comfortable with both of those aspects of your life and yourself, like I kind of don't like how today it's become you're either a Republican or you're either a Democrat, or you are, if you're a Democrat, you're not allowed to associate with Republicans because they might teach you this or that. Or sometimes if you associate with
Yeah.
Democrat, like I don't like that because
Hmm.
that's not my experience of the United States of America. It's not.
Hmm.
And I would love to get into this on a deeper level because I think it could be really useful to many of your listeners, to hear an outsider's perspective of America, because I think sometimes Americans don't understand how insanely amazing this country is and how lucky you guys are to be here with all the good and the bad things, with all the negative and the positive. I still think America is one of the greatest countries. I really do, because
Wow.
of what it has meant to me, and
Yeah.
how it has allowed me to like grow and build myself and find myself and just learn so much about myself and, like all those things. So,
I'm amazed, Samara, that you have become and found yourself as a business woman. That to me is, there's so many amazing things about you, but the fact that you're in California and you're like, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to be independent. I'm not going to work for anybody else. I'm going to work for my own company. I'm going to own it. It's my concept. It's my art. It's really artistic what you're doing. Is every teaching experience is an art form, I think.
thank you.
Like when
Thank
I
you.
when I brought myself to the classes at LMU, I looked at it as a piece of art that I was creating. Like, we're doing philosophy, we're teaching students a little logic, uh, we're teaching them to respect critical thinking and critical dialogue, Socratic dialogue, um, interaction with the voices of the past that have survived criticism, at least some criticism. So there's some respect for tradition there as well. And it's an art form because there's so much that you can cover in any philosophy class. You leave stuff out, you include some things. What do you leave out? What do you include? You
Mm,
don't have a lot of time. The
mm,
students have very limited attention span.
mhm,
What do you how do you do it? Well, you have to be kind of an artist about it. So, and
mhm,
the way I look at what you do is you created something that didn't exist. You saw an opportunity, you saw a need to be filled, and you said, me with my unique abilities and my passions and my giftings, you said, I will fill that. And that takes tremendous, from my perspective, I think it's courage. Maybe you didn't feel afraid, but I feel like it's amazing to be able to start a business in California and make it flourish.
thank you. I appreciate that. But I also think as a teacher, as an educator,
Mhm.
you have to understand that the best way for you to be a good educator is to have a clear path of why are you even in this business. Let's call it the business of education. Okay, why are you in it? Because I feel like if you're in it just for the money, although money is important, although money, we need money to survive, but I
Yeah.
think that if a person is in it only for the money, I think it's going to lose some of its real true purpose.
Yeah.
So I think in the field of education, sometimes these limitations that we are sometimes aware of and many times not aware of are implied in the classroom. And I realize that it's not for me. It's not for me. I don't think
Yeah.
that you can tell someone how to teach a language. I think
Mm.
it's the job of every teacher to figure out a way that's going to make it interesting, engaging, and also productive for your students to get something out of that class.
Yeah.
Yes. So, because of my background, it's impossible for me to just teach you the language. I have to teach you the cultural aspects. I have to
Mhm.
introduce you to certain texts, certain literature that I know for a fact you have never been exposed to. Okay. So that you can fully understand the meaning of the word English, or maybe the meaning of the words, the English language.
Right.
Okay. 2 or 3 years ago, I was doing some research and I came across this like statistic or whatever. Most of the information that exists in the world has been written in English or translated to English.
Mm.
Most of the information that exists in the world has been written in English or translated to English. Okay. And so that to me was like mind boggling, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for the rest of us? For
Right.
all of us who don't speak English, that means that this huge chunk of information, huge chunk of amazing knowledge, I'm literally cutting myself out of that. I can't participate in
Right.
that because it's in English. So I
Wow.
always
Wow.
use this just as among many examples to my students, like, you cannot fall victim to your circumstances. Yeah, if you were kicked out of your country for whatever reason, okay, you are now here and you must flourish, you must
Wow.
work hard, you must study, you must show this country what you are made of, and so I don't mean to kind of jump from this topic to that topic or blah blah blah, but politically, uh
Right.
some
Right.
sometimes the boogeyman is always like the immigrant, like, oh, the bad immigrants coming in and taking your jobs, and I can see through that BS like no other, because what these people are, they are individuals just like anybody else. And some of them are going to be crooked, and some of them are going to be rotten, and some of them are going to be just really bad, lost, horrible individuals, 100%. But to use the word immigrants as a way to identify all these other people who have done incredible things, who are doing incredible, brave. May I use the word brave in its real nature, in its real form, as it should be used? Because you know what? When you leave your country, a part of you is broken forever. In that sense, I got bad news for you. When you leave
Yeah.
your country, especially when you are forced to leave your country, I guarantee you, you're going to end up somewhat of a broken individual for the rest of your life. And to a certain extent, you just kind of have to make peace with that. Like, okay, I'm never ever gonna fully be whole again, and that's okay. But how
Mhm.
can I use these little parts of myself to try to create some type of reality for myself that works, and
Yeah.
so that's brave, to leave family members behind, to leave all these people, your comfort behind, your language, your culture, all these things, which I guarantee you most people don't want to leave behind. They don't
Yeah.
want to, but they have to,
Mm.
and then of course for all of us, or for most of us, America has been like the shining star, like, I don't know how this happened, but like, I get so emotional when, like, it's 4th of July and I wasn't even born here, like, I think it's such a beautiful celebration, or President's Day. I don't care which president it is. I may not have liked Trump, but I would never have disrespected him because he's the president of the United States. I have this kind of deep respect for this country that I just will never, ever disrespect. You know what I mean? Or if it's like, I don't know, like I remember the funeral of John McCain, like I was crying so much. I thought his life story was incredible. Even if I didn't necessarily maybe agree with everything that he stood for, it did not matter. His life story to me was just like incredible, amazing. So I
Yeah.
don't know, like,
Is that what you
um,
meant when you said, because I think earlier you said, let me look at my notes here. You said you learn, I might have not got the quote
no
down
problem.
exactly, but that you said something about learning from Democrats and Republicans, and that's why you don't like cancel culture and
Yeah.
the censorship. Is that what you meant? What did you mean by that?
Yes, I meant like when I first came to the United States, I knew nothing about Democrats and Republicans. To tell you the truth, I knew nothing.
How old
In
were you when you came to the US?
I was 21 or 22, I think. 22. 22.
22. So you went right
Mhm.
from Croatia
To the
to
US.
US. What city
Uh-huh. Um,
or town?
which, oh, in LA. Oh, I came
You
directly to
came
LA.
directly to LA.
Yes.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
You weren't messing around. You came right to Los
No,
Angeles.
I came right to LA, and then I was here for a couple of months, and then I went to New York for like 4 months, I think. 3 4 months, and then I came back to LA again. So
Okay.
um, I knew nothing about Republicans, Democrats, or any kind of American politics. But what I did
Hold
know
on one
was
second. Sorry.
no problem, no problem. I appreciate it.
Sorry about that.
No
Okay, we're back.
problem.
You were in the middle of
So,
an amazing story. Okay.
so I was saying that when I first came to the United States, to Los Angeles, I honestly knew nothing really. I didn't know much about American politics. I didn't know Republicans, Democrats, none of that. But I did have certain like figures in my mind that kind of I really respected and like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, for example, because of what they did for former Yugoslavia. Because we looked at them as kind of heroes, like they saved us from the war. Well, at least everyone outside of Serbia did, I would say. But so yeah, I
Because
had
tell us everybody what Bill Clinton did.
well, Bill Clinton initiated the bombing to make Serbs stop the war essentially, and these brutal. Uh, okay,
Are
Bill
the
Clinton.
Serbs the Christians or the Muslims? I forget.
Serbs are predominantly Orthodox Christian. Orthodox
Okay.
Christian. So Bill Clinton had that bombing that he was administrated by him, I believe, and then that sort of helped stop the war in former Yugoslavia. And
And
so
that was in Kosovo that he bombed.
yes, he bombed like certain
Serbs were in Kosovo.
military.
Okay.
He bombed certain military bases, in like Serbia and even certain parts of Montenegro, actually. But I mean,
Okay.
it stopped the conflict. It stopped the
So
war. So
you
we
come
looked
and
at.
you're like, I like Clinton. I like Hillary.
Yes, I love
You love
I
Hillary.
love them.
Okay.
I mean, I respected them because of the idea that I had in my head, that and to be
Okay.
honest, to this day, although I know more about them now, I still think, like we were saying earlier, I still think it's so important. How can you call yourself an individual thinker and not an emotional thinker if you're not able to look at someone like Hillary Clinton and say, okay, politically, I disagree with her 1,000,000%. But let me just give her credit where credit's due, such as, being a woman in the United States during the times that she was going to law school. And it wasn't just, yeah, go to law school. You're a woman. You're welcome. For those things, I really respect her. And I think she has very thick skin. And I appreciate that. And I'm inspired by that, as a woman. I think it's important to have a thick skin and not just, fall victim to everything that people think of you and the way people see you. So yeah, even to this day, I'm able to separate the things I don't agree with and things I agree with or look up to in a person, most of the time, I think. So yeah, but so coming to LA, I had no prior knowledge about American politics and, Republicans and Democrats. And so my very first experience on Santa Monica campus was this. I was taking a class, and for a commencement, uh, governor at the time, Schwarzenegger, was invited to come and give a speech or something like that, a commencement speech at Santa Monica College.
This is
And
Santa Monica College. Okay.
yes, I
That's a community
remember,
college and it's in
yes,
Los Angeles. It's in the
yes,
far west part of Los Angeles County.
yes, yes.
Okay.
And I remember one of the professors, I forgot which class I was in, but she was like, okay, so we're not going to shake his hand. And, we're not going to, if there was some type of protest against what he. For or whatever.
Mhm.
So I remember that was my first introduction to Arnold. Like, oh, he's the bad guy. He's the bad guy.
Well, he's a
You
Republican.
know, so exactly later
That's
on, I was
yeah. Okay.
able
You
to,
got it. I got it.
same thing with George Bush, for example.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, George Bush won. And today, George Bush is I would say one of my favorite Americans, not necessarily one of my favorite presidents, but one of my favorite Americans. I think, first of all, he has an amazing sense of humor. You can't beat his sense of humor.
Are you talking about George W. Bush?
Yes, I'm talking about
All
W. Yes.
right.
so,
Gotcha. W.
so
Wow.
yeah.
You are a
So,
fully American now.
well, I mean, I just really appreciate him as a human being. I think that
Gotcha.
maybe he wasn't the best president. That's fine. But I think he's an amazing American. And so I'm sharing these things. Why? Because when I came here, not knowing anything about Republicans, Democrats, none of that
Right.
stuff, no political history really, these little ideas are kind of, you're introduced like, oh, the
Yeah.
bad guy,
Yeah.
oh, the bad people.
Bad people. Yeah.
Right? But what does it boil down to? It boils down to this: the immense power that you have as a human being to educate yourself. So, whether you are in the United States, whether you are in Saudi Arabia, whether you are in former Yugoslavia, ideas are going to be thrown at you. I'm sorry to tell you, ideas, concepts, feelings, emotions, opinions are going to be thrown at you. But you got to be ready to play ball, and you got to be ready to kind of, okay, well, that's what she thinks, but what is it really about? So
Right.
that's what I learned at LMU, specifically through your course, that you don't have to necessarily attach yourself hardcore to this one idea, to this one way, to this, that. Play ball, be ready. Be ready. You never know what that person has to say. And so at least I'll hear you out. Let's see if we can have a conversation or maybe not have a conversation. So these little ideas were kind of thrown at me at the beginning that I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of.
Yeah.
But I later on realized, oh, yeah, that's why I thought of maybe Arnold was the bad guy, but he's actually not really a bad guy. He has an amazing life story.
He's an immigrant.
I mean, what an amazing immigrant story he has.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
So many reasons. If you need someone to look up to or be inspired by someone, so many reasons to look at that guy and be like, okay, I don't agree with you politically, but I think you've done an amazing job in your own personal life with all the things you've accomplished or whatever.
Right. Right.
And I feel like sometimes today it's really hard for people to do that because it's like, no, but I can't be inspired by what you've done.
There's all these
because,
rules.
exactly.
So in other words, you got to LA. Well, actually, New York and LA are both heavily Democrat areas, heavily. And so you got here and you picked up from the social cues that there's certain rules for social acceptance, predominantly, not always, but predominantly. You're supposed to hate this party or this person. You're supposed to believe this and not believe that. Did you find that there was a lot of healthy critical analysis, critical thinking, people thinking for themselves, or did you find that there was a lot of room for improvement on that?
So, going back to what we were talking about earlier, today I believe that wherever you find yourself in life at this very moment, like May 4th, 2022, 11:10 a.m., okay, wherever you find yourself in life at this very moment, Your life experience is literally an accumulation of a bunch of different things that have happened to you, that you have experienced, that you have
Mhm.
learned from, not learned from, or whatever, you know. So that's what I know now. Okay, that's what I know now. And back then, I didn't necessarily understand that in its fullest form. Okay. So, yeah, I was more naive for sure. And I was more gullible for
You mean at
sure.
23 years old, you were naive?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For
That's older
sure.
than most of your classmates at LMU when you went
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
Okay.
For sure. You know, because it's like, oh, what about this? What about that? You know, da da da. You know, so
Well,
I
what kind
def
of experience before you got to LMU? Did you have any experience that helped you process?
well, I was at Santa Monica College for 2 years, 2.5 years. But you have to remember, this was my first time living in America. This was
Right.
my first time living completely by myself, millions of miles away from everybody, from my family. I was experiencing this brand new culture, which was unlike anything else I had experienced before. To me, Americans were such like curious people. They always wanted to talk, which is very unusual in Sweden. People always kind of keep their distance, don't want to talk. You know, I made so many friends. I got to know so many new people. So it was like that kind of a time in my life, you know? And
Hmm.
everything I had seen in TV shows and movies about college life totally matched my experience. It was just,
Really?
yeah, it was so cool.
Wow.
Like the
Like what?
campus,
The
like
campus, yeah.
all the kids running to their classes.
Uh-huh.
And then you have all these, I don't know, like a little military stand where they try to recruit you to go to the military. And then you have the anti-abortion people, and like, oh my God, to me,
There
like,
were Republicans on Santa Monica City
well,
College.
there were definitely like little stands of
Okay.
just people kind of protesting different things
Yeah,
or
sure.
trying to get your attention. And, I thought that was so amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like all
Did you
these
have a
different.
favorite class there?
At Santa Monica, I had several favorite classes. I had
Tell us about
a
those.
sociology class that I really liked. I had these Italian classes. I loved
Wow.
my Italian professor. I think I still credit him to this day. Like he really helped me to learn what it is to be a good language teacher. I
How,
thought he was an amazing language teacher, for
how
example.
many languages would you say that you're comfortable with using?
7 different languages.
7?
Yes.
What are they? Okay, we already know Albanian. We know
So Albanian, Serbo-Croatian, Swedish, English, obviously, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. I'm like really
oh my
comfortable with these
gosh.
7, but my French isn't bad, but I don't like to consider myself like fluent if I am not like super duper fluent. Like I'll give you an example. I have these courses, absolute beginners courses, English from scratch courses that I teach. And I teach both of them. One I teach in Spanish and the other one I teach in Portuguese. So unless I'm,
Wait, you speak
unless,
English? Hold on a sec. Let me write that down. You speak English.
Mhm.
Just kidding. 7 languages, Samra?
Yes, yes. But you have to understand that doesn't include all the languages that I can understand. Because of Serbo-Croatian, I can understand Russian, I can understand Bulgarian, I can understand Slovakian,
Wow.
Macedonian. Because of Swedish, I can understand Norwegian, I can understand Danish. In fact, when I was a student in Croatia, there was this Danish woman there, and I became really good friends with her. And so she would speak to me in Danish and I would respond in Swedish, because they are similar languages. They are Germanic languages. So you can't just kind of pretend like, okay, that's not also a part of who you are. But I also studied Greek at LMU. I won a scholarship in 2010 and I went to Greece for a month and studied Greek intensively. And
Wow.
then I also studied Arabic through my students. So, there are all these other languages that are kind of a part there in the background, but the seven are the ones I'm really comfortable with. I can carry a conversation and no problem.
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't remember exactly where this was, how
Oh,
this
you were
was.
saying you were at Santa Monica. You took your favorite classes, sociology. See, I'm taking good notes. And
Mhm,
you had an Italian professor. So
mhm.
then when you said Italian, I said, hold on. Is this one of the languages?
Yep. And he was one of my most amazing professors ever because of the way he taught a language, like just like such an organized way of teaching. And
Hmm.
he really made me understand grammar for the first time in my life. Like, oh, this isn't just
Really?
a bunch of rules. All of this is somehow connected and it's useful for us to know. But
Wow.
I wouldn't be Samra today if I didn't credit one of my absolute favorite teachers from Santa Monica College, Mr. Green, Terry Green. You see, I going to Sweden, we had this, I mean, being a student in Sweden, we had this option of skipping classes that somehow made us uncomfortable. So, like math, I was just never good at math. And so it made me feel uncomfortable because you're constantly the only kid in class that doesn't get anything. So it's like,
Yeah.
well, if I'm given the opportunity to skip this, of course I will.
Hmm.
Right. So I just kept putting it off. I'll take the exam next year. Okay, no problem, I'll take it next year. So I never ever got into math.
Okay.
Moved to the United States only to realize that if I want to transfer to a university, I must get these basic math courses out of the way.
Hmm.
And so I tried so hard, like, okay, well, maybe there's a way for me to like pass this somehow without studying or blah, blah, blah. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Logic well enough to know that I was simply fooling myself to believe that. And so I failed the first class, I failed the second class. And so the
What
third
was
attempt,
Mr. Green teaching these classes?
no, that's the
Okay.
thing. He wasn't teaching these classes. And so I'm trying to use him as an example, as someone who introduced me to a topic that I essentially had hated all my life. But he introduced me to this topic in such a
Hmm.
unique way that it also taught me a very important life lesson, honestly. So I failed the first class, failed the second class, and so I'm presented with this ultimatum, like, okay, well, either you have one last chance to pass this math course, otherwise you have to go to another college and try to take it. And so that was not an option whatsoever for me. So I had to really put my heart and soul into this class and try to pass it.
Wow.
Just by sheer coincidence, I run into one of my friends, this older Black woman at Santa Monica College, who was a really good friend of mine. She's like, "Oh my God, Samra, oh my God, I have the solution for you. You have to take Mr. Green's class." So I go to his whatever classroom, and there's like a huge line of students outside waiting, I'm guessing, to sign up for his class. So
Was he black,
no,
Mr.
a
Green?
white, yes, white teacher, white guy.
Okay.
He basically had like a super long history there at Santa Monica. I guess he had been teaching for years and years and years. And so he was definitely a veteran. And at that point, it became clear to me, okay, this isn't just a teacher. This is a special teacher because everyone wants to take his classes. So anyway, I get it's my turn to talk to him, and he's like, "Okay, how may I help you?" And I was like, "Well, I really need your class." And he cuts straight to the chase. He's like, "Why do you need my class?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Please, please, without this class, I won't be able to graduate, and I really need to graduate." He's like, "But why should I?" He's like, "You still haven't told me why should I allow you to be in my class?" And I'm like, "Well, I promise I'll work really hard." Like, I'm literally pleading at this point, because I need this desperately, not only so that I can graduate, but also my scholarship money that was coming from Sweden was, I need this. So I'm like desperate, please, please, please. He's like, "All right." And he literally shakes hands with me right then and there. And he's like, I'll let you sign up for this class. I'll give you the registration number right now, only if you promise me that you will pass this course, you know? And, you know, no one had ever put such trust on me when it came to numbers, you know, and when it came to this subject that I despised. So I took that so seriously, so seriously, and then walked into his classroom with utmost respect. I'm like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to pass this course, just to learn that also his way of teaching was extremely encouraging. So he always had this sign, this sentence written on the board saying, math is beautiful. And he always started every single math course, every single math class with some kind of a math joke. So I kind of loved it because it really took off the edge, you know, like that intensity, because I was right away worried, like, oh my God, I'm going to be the only one who doesn't understand anything. Oh my God, I'm not going to know, blah, blah. So his way of explaining introduced me to math in a completely different way. And he made me math literate, like the basic knowledge that I think everyone needs to know when it comes to math. He gave that to me, you know? So the big life lesson there for me was like, never have that attitude where it's like, oh, I'm not good at that, so I can't learn it. That's not necessarily true. Have you actually tried to learn it? Have you actually given it your best? Have you actually attempted to understand it? And the answer was so clear to me. It was like, nope, I had not. You know, and not only did I pass his courses, but I passed them with flying colors. You know, I did really, really well. And so shout out to Professor Green.
Is
Amazing,
he still
amazing,
alive?
amazing. I think
Was
so.
he
I mean,
old when you took him?
he was probably in his early 60s, late 50s,
Did you ever
maybe.
go back and tell him
I
how
did
much?
once. I did go back and tell him. I
That's
went to
good.
his office and I told him. And I think he remembered me like vaguely because it was like a few years after I had taken his
Gotcha.
course. But you know, I said
Wow, that's
you.
cool.
So
How
yeah.
how did
So
that inspire you in your teaching? Did you were you able to take any lessons about any kind of lesson from about teaching?
yeah, I mean, just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you know everything, doesn't
Right.
mean you
That's
have
right.
every single subject, you have mastered every single subject. And I don't see myself as that teacher. I'm always,
Mm.
always open to learn. You know, have I possibly figured out a few cool tricks when it comes to language teaching that, you know, might be a little bit neat, a little bit different? Yeah, sure. But that doesn't make me like a master teacher, you know, and this
Right.
isn't like, you know, the fake humble that many people do these days, like, oh, I'm not worthy, please, I'm not worthy, you know. No, 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 it's not that at all. It's just like, you know, there's still a ton of space for me to learn and improve and get better. But I think he just reminded me, you are, why are you in this? And when I looked at that guy, it was clear to me he's in it because he sees something in math that us, you know, we poor bastards don't see. And he needs to show us, like, why should I learn this? Why should I bother with this? You know, because a really common, I would argue, I could be wrong, but I think a really common argument that comes from people who don't like math or who just have this really negative attitude towards math is like, eh, I don't need it. I know the basics, 1 + 1, 10 + 10. When am I ever going to use this? But I realized through his classes, when I was learning how to solve equations, I'm like, oh my God, I'm exercising my brain in a way where my logic is also being exercised. You
Yeah.
know, and honestly, later on in life, you realize decision making is
Right.
connected to that type of, you know, solving
Yes.
equations. Is this a
Right.
good solution? Is this a bad solution? Is this
Right.
the only solution? Are there other solutions?
Right.
You know, I would have
Absolutely.
never known that had it not been for the transmission of his knowledge, and my willingness to take in his knowledge and accept his knowledge, So,
Did that
yeah,
math class transfer to LMU?
it did. All
Oh,
of
that's
those
cool.
math classes transferred. Um, in fact, I should say those classes, math classes that I needed to pass, were the ticket to this statistics class, which would then be transferred to LMU. So the
Gotcha.
statistics class was the one, the
Gotcha.
transferable one, but you couldn't get there unless you
Ah,
finish these classes first,
okay.
So,
I gotcha.
mhm. And then, by the way, you know, he having these classes with these classes with him and gaining getting used to his teaching style. And then, I had one course with him and then I had the following course with him. I was like, yes. And then I'm like, please, the last one. Turns out he doesn't teach that course. So it's like another huge life lesson
Mm,
for me. Oh, what do I do now? Do I just give up because Mr.
right.
Green isn't? No. And then I had this, not the best teacher necessarily, but she was a really nice person. But what I learned through that experience is my determination to learn. I had already decided I don't give a damn. I'm going to do whatever it takes to pass this course. So you see, I didn't focus on her not being the best teacher. I did what I had to do and I passed that course. That's what mattered.
You
You
focused on
see?
yourself.
Exactly. I didn't get in there with this attitude, oh, she's not going to teach me and she's not going to be a great teacher. Is it a blessing if you have an amazing teacher? Come on. Of course it is, but you're not always going to have an amazing
I
teacher. So
know.
what happens then? What happens then? You
And there's
just
so
give
much
up?
to learn. There's so much to learn, and there's so
Exactly.
much work to do. That's why when you say these like things that happen on college campus, like the protests and hating Republicans and stuff, I just
Mhm.
think that what is that taking the place of? You have so much work and to learn. I mean, that's what
Mhm.
college is for. And there's
Mhm.
so many distractions from that,
Mhm.
and so many just false ways to feel good about yourself for a moment
Mhm.
that just
Mhm.
have nothing to do with growing as your own individual, as a thinker, as a future business owner, right?
Yes, but to a certain extent, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've kind of come to have somewhat of a sympathy towards many college professors and college teachers because they kind of remind me of language teachers. I think I think that you know just because you are proficient in English and just because you're like really good at English, that's your native language, it doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
that you're going to feel comfortable teaching that to other students. So I've noticed in
Right.
the English teaching community, for example, many teachers are very nervous about correcting their students, for example, right? It's like,
uh,
oh, I don't want to offend you. I don't want you to feel bad,
how do you
blah,
feel
blah,
about
blah.
that? Do you correct your
Oh, I
student?
love it. That's like the first thing I always tell my
how,
students.
how do you do it?
Hey,
How do you do it?
I always tell them this. I reference back to a staff meeting that we had at a school that I was working with, that I was working at a private school. I was a teacher, an English teacher for like a few years. And it was a really great experience. I learned a lot from that, but I also learned that that type of teaching style isn't really for me, So I remember once the manager had a meeting with all the staff, teachers, blah, blah, blah. And so she said, oh, by the way, don't correct your students. Like, don't correct them. You never know. They might be sensitive and blah, 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 blah. And although her intentions were good, I know her intentions were good, no doubt about it. Right away, I was like, oh my God, this is BS. And I'm not going to apply this to the classroom. Like, I'm not going to apply this to the classroom. So, like, the first thing I always tell my students is I tell them that story and I tell them, I'm not going to be that teacher. I am going to correct you because some of
Hmm.
my best teachers corrected me and
So
they
you tell
helped
them
me.
and you say right
Absolutely,
up
I
front.
tell them. And
Gotcha.
it's always super well received and it's always very popular. It's like, yes, thank you, teacher. I appreciate
Mm,
it.
Yeah,
because
because it's clear, and then they don't have to try to read through the subtle, non-spoken, non-written rules and try to figure out, do I have that rule right, or am I missing something? You just say
mhm,
it. You just clearly
mhm,
say, no, that's wrong.
mhm, mhm.
And here's the right
And
way.
and I think you become more comfortable doing that, the more comfortable you become with yourself, and it should never be one of those
Good
like,
point.
well, this is my opinion, take it or leave it. No,
Right,
but I'm
right.
okay disagreeing or having my own opinion. I'm totally okay with that. I'm
What
not attached to this idea of others must accept me in order for me to accept myself. I'm not really,
what
you
did you get
know,
your bachelor's degree in?
modern languages. That
Okay.
was my major. And then my minor was modern Greek history. So
How did you get into teaching your first class, your first English class? How did you find yourself teaching English as a profession?
in all honesty, I was just really desperate for a job and I really needed a job. And so I went on Craigslist and just looked for any English teaching jobs because I
Mm.
figured that could work for me, or that might work for me. And so I was called in to this private school as a substitute teacher. It was supposed to be just like for a few days, and then a few days turned into a month, and then a month turned into a full time position. So, in all honesty, I had no teacher training. I had no like certificates or anything like that. I just kind of threw myself into that classroom and did what I thought would be the best thing to do. And it really worked out well um, in that case, especially because the students were like petitioning for me to become like a full-time teacher. And so I think we just clicked automatically, all of us, because of our backgrounds. And I feel like I really, really understand so much that sense of feeling nervous and scared and anxious and to speak in English, and you also don't want to sound dumb and you don't want to sound
Yeah.
stupid and you don't want other people to be like, what are you saying? I don't understand you. I get all of that, but
Do you have someone help you with the technology, or are you just good at technology? How do you figure out all the
well,
technology stuff that you need to do?
luckily, all the technology stuff is relatively simple. I'm big on doing like YouTube tutorials and I'll just like
Okay.
teach myself. So, for example, when I started with everything, I just had no idea how to, you know how it is when you first start your company, you have no idea what to do. You have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
How do I get students? How do I, it's like all these kind of stressful.
Did you take your laptop and go to the coffee shop and watch YouTube video after YouTube video, or did you talk with friends?
Well,
Did you
uh,
lock yourself in the apartment until you figured it out? How did you do it?
honestly, it's crazy, but sometimes making silly decisions is ends up working out for you because I swear, I think it kicks you out of that comfort zone and it pushes you to do things that you normally wouldn't have. So
Right.
here's the
That's
silly
right.
decision number one. I just felt so comfortable and confident in my teaching abilities that I was like, you know what? I'm just going to quit this job and I'm just going to start my own little company. At that point, I was like the most popular teacher because I kept winning. They had these like award things every semester that was totally, I mean, it wasn't designed by me. That's just something that they practiced. And so students chose like their favorite teacher. And I was constantly chosen as like the best teacher, blah, blah, blah. So I felt really confident, like, okay, you know what? I think I have something. I think I know how I can help people overcome all these different language barriers. But see, you don't just leave your job. You don't just like cut out your entire income and then, okay, let's do this. You maybe cut hours. Maybe instead of being a full time, you are a part time. And so because you're part time, you're trying to figure out this small little business on the side. But see, I didn't do that. I went straight into it. you know. And now when I think back to it, first of all, I would never have done that now the way I think now, but I'm happy I did it because it pushed me. It really kicked me and pushed me to enter into all these uncomfortable zones that I knew nothing about, you know, so I could speed up the process of making a name for myself and getting myself out there on social media and learning how to manage social media and how to handle social media and how to put yourself out there and all these things, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
that's how I did it, honestly. And
Amazing.
next thing you know, for example, nowadays I rarely ever teach individual classes unless it's, if you remember, I was introduced to a few, like, you know, public figures or whatever, you know, that needed my help. And so unless it's like
Right.
that type of a project, I don't
I think I
teach.
met the public
Individual.
figure you're talking about at
Yes.
his home. Yeah.
Yes.
That
And
was
then that
interesting.
public figure led to a bunch of other public figures, you know.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
unless it's that kind of a project, but even there, I'm very picky and choosy because I want to make sure that my time is invested in the right way
Yes.
and that I am of you know, that I am of help, of real
Right.
genuine help to these
Yes.
students.
Yeah.
So nowadays I just teach group classes, you know, and like students get together online and we have classes, you know, and
That's awesome.
we learn English and we learn languages and we learn all these different things. So
And you're
that's
able
kind
to
of how
make
it started.
enough, you're able to make enough money to live in a very expensive area.
Oh, absolutely. And
Mm.
there's so much more money to be made in this business. You know, there's just
Really?
like, oh my God, yes, like this is
Tell me
such
how.
I mean, the need for
Sure.
the
Yeah.
language,
Right.
for the English language is immense, immense. And
Wow.
it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And especially in, you know, in the Latin American side of the world, you
Right.
know, because, you know, we're just getting more and more and more globalized. And
That's where your
what
Spanish helps a lot.
my Spanish and my Portuguese, you know,
Wow.
you have no idea how much it helps, you know. So,
Wow.
so, um, so yeah, in these countries, because see, if you're speaking about a country like Sweden, you'll
Mhm.
go to Sweden and like every other person speaks English so well.
Mhm.
It's like mind boggling. You're going to be like, oh, okay, well, maybe English is a second language here. No, it's not. But it's just that we are exposed to the language, the English language at a very young age. See,
Do
that's
you
not the
consider
case.
yourself Swedish?
No, no, no,
Okay.
no,
Do you
no,
consider yourself American?
no, I don't. I
You
consider
consider, what do you consider
myself
yourself?
Albanian from Montenegro. That's for
So
sure.
you're still Albanian.
Yes.
Are you still Muslim? Or do you want to not want to talk about that?
No, I mean, it's
You
not
can you
even,
can steer away if you
to be
don't, if you're
honest,
not.
it's not even steering away. I just, when it comes to religion, it's a little bit different for me. You know, I'm not necessarily attached to any like religious belief in the
Okay.
sense where I just practice it or go to church or go to the mosque.
Yeah.
But I think I have, to a certain extent, I have respect for religion, you know, and so
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Do your
yeah.
students ever ask you these questions, or is that too personal for them?
Sometimes they do, especially because of my name, because I have an Arabic name. And so, especially if it's someone who speaks Arabic, they'll always be like, are you Muslim? You know, are you, you know, and they get
Your
so
name is
excited.
Arabic? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is. It's an Arabic name for sure. In fact, it's an Arabic word. And
What's
so
it
if you
mean?
speak Arabic, it means, from what I understand, it means like a woman that is tanned. So like a tanned woman. That's literally what it means.
Wow.
And so if you speak Arabic,
How do you say your
regardless,
last name?
well, the authentic pronunciation is Dreshevich, Dreshevich. But
Okay.
then there is also like the Albanian version, as I call it, which is Dreshai. So many years ago, when my ancestors immigrated to Montenegro from Albania, their last name was Dreshai, but they kind of changed it to Dreshevich as a
That
way to
sounds like
just
Slavic.
exactly to
Okay.
assimilate, easier to
Uh,
assimilate. Yes,
gotcha.
exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
Yes. Hmm.
So you're there's so many things, man. It's amazing what you've been able to do in America that so many Americans, I feel like, wouldn't feel like they could do. I think that the a number of challenging times you've had in your life have has shaped you, but also it must be your personality as well because you're very curious, you're hardworking,
Thank you. Thank you.
you're very industrious. Like if you don't know how to start a business, if you don't know something about technology, you're like, okay, I'm going to learn that today. A lot of people don't do that. They would just, wivel
but
up.
but honestly, stop and think about, like, I can think about my childhood. You can think about your childhood.
Right.
Did we have technology? No. Did we have
No,
cell phones? Did we have the internet? We did not.
no.
So even then, we were able to learn many things. Imagine today, I would be a fool to sit and wait for someone to to teach me something if I can teach myself that. You know what I mean? and
There,
and you're not
yeah.
necessarily going to be, maybe I'm not a pro video editor, I'm not a
Yeah.
pro social media post creator, but man, I've taught myself really well. So it's like,
Yeah.
sometimes that's that big illusion, I can't get started unless or until, oh, I have all these means and all these opportunities, and but that's not true. That's not true.
Ca-
You do what you can with what you have, you
Can
know.
can we ask you a question or two about what your day is like? Like, are you an early riser? Do you have breakfast in the morning, coffee? What time do you go to bed? How many hours a week do you
So
work?
I'm definitely an early riser. So I usually wake up 5:30, 5:45. I really enjoy waking up early.
Do you set an
Although I
alarm? Do you have an alarm?
Yes, I do have an alarm. Although I have this like complicated relationship between the night and the morning because I love them both.
Oh
So it's like
wow,
a part of me
you're tortured.
loves to stay awake, like just because of the silence and because everything is dark and quiet
Uh-huh.
and silent. But then in the morning, there's also that sense of silence. Not everyone has woken up yet and all
Yes.
those things. But I
Mm.
like to wake up early, and I must wake up early because many of my students are on a completely different time zone. So I have to make myself available to them. Um, so for example, it's almost noon. I haven't eaten breakfast because I practice this thing called intermittent fasting, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Yeah, I've
So
heard of
it's
it.
supposed to be really good for your health and has some great health benefits and energy and longevity. So I like it a lot. It works for me. So I don't
So
eat
you
anything.
never have breakfast?
No, I don't eat anything until noon.
No breakfast.
Usually no breakfast. I
What
don't
about
have.
coffee?
You can have black coffee if you want, but I have this
Well, what do
very
you have when you wake up?
I just drink water. I don't have anything. I
Just
just drink
water.
water. Yep. So this would
Wow.
be probably my third bottle or second bottle today. I don't
So you
remember.
only have water and then you light a cigarette, you light a cigar.
Absolutely no cigars, no
Okay.
cigarettes, none of that stuff.
Only marijuana. Only marijuana for Samra.
Hell no, no
Heroin?
marijuana, no way,
No
none of that
heroin?
stuff for
Okay.
Samra. But it's interesting
Meth? Nothing?
because you mentioned my personality.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm able to like psych myself up so much just with my personality, and it's this sense of gratitude. To
Gratitude.
Gratitude is key.
Okay.
Gratitude.
So
If I
water
wake
and
up in the
gratitude.
morning and I have water and gratitude, that's what psychs me up in the morning,
Okay.
because
I'm
if
going
I
to
don't
ask
have
you
gratitude,
okay. I'm going to ask you a philosophical
if I don't
question.
have, oh, uh-oh, do am I ready for this? Am I ready
Well,
for this question?
gratitude assumes you're thanking somebody. So who are you thanking?
Probably God in my case. I usually thank God. I
Okay.
always say, thank God for this, thank God for that.
Yeah,
That's
you do
something I
say that.
grew up with. So I always thank God. I
Gotcha.
always say,
Okay.
thank God for this. Even, God willingly, I like to
Yeah,
use that a lot,
very cultural. And
So
then, so you have water. And you go to the shooting range and you go shoot at the shooting
I
range
no,
for
I've
hours?
never been to a shooting range.
Would you like to
Never.
go?
Ah, I'm not sure, actually.
Okay.
I think I'm scared, to be
You
honest. I
scared?
think I'm scared. Like,
There's a shooting range near LMU that I could take you to if you want to
yeah.
go. It's called LAX Ammunition. It's
you
on
know,
Manchester. And I'll take you. I've taken former students before. I could take you to train you if you want.
it's funny because I remember once you mentioned that, you were like, hey, what about a shooting range? And I'm like, oh my
It is
God, no,
jolting.
not a shooting
No, it
range.
is. It's jolting to your body. It's very loud. Some people don't like guns. Are you afraid of guns?
I mean,
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
no, 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 you're not putting me on the spot. It's just maybe not something I've necessarily thought about too much. I think probably many people, when we see a gun, it's like, okay, but I understand you
Not
need
me.
guns
I'm
for
like, what kind of gun
protection.
is that?
Yeah, but you're also the Republican professor.
That's
Let's be
true.
really
That is very
let's
true.
be I know how Republicans feel about their guns. I know how Republicans feel about their Second Amendment. I know that.
Innocent is
Okay.
charged. Yes.
But I mean, all jokes aside and all of that, I don't know. It's just not something I'm interested in, to tell you the truth.
Gotcha.
I'm just
Okay.
not,
Well, the offer
you know.
stands. So you have water, you have gratitude. What do you have for lunch? When noon comes, is it like Ramadan at night?
I usually prepare my meals like 2, 3 days ahead of time. I love to cook. I
Wow.
think I'm a pretty good cook. I like to prepare my meals. So probably today I'll have, a little bit of mashed potatoes, maybe a little piece of my stuffed peppers, and a little
Wow.
bit of a salad. And then I'll have a coffee, because if I have
Okay.
it very early in the morning,
Hmm.
it's gonna be not
Acidic.
so good for me, to be
Acidic,
honest.
yeah.
Not only that, but also very jittery and just too much energy. And I don't like to feel that way before
Are
class.
you
I like to,
vegetarian? Do you
no,
not drink? Okay.
no, no, no.
Then what do you
Mm-mm.
have for dinner? Do you have a dinner at all?
Yeah, yeah, I'll have maybe whatever, well, like I said, whatever I've made, like maybe I'll have some meat with rice and a salad, or I'll have grilled chicken legs. I love to grill chicken legs, with some rice and salad, whatever I have made, I'll just have that for dinner. And, you know, there you go, but when dinner is over, usually I have until 8 p.m. No more eating. It's like drink
Okay.
water, but no more eating. Yes.
After 8, no more.
Yes.
Samra, we are so grateful that you've come on to the Republican Professor podcast, a former student, a dear student, and wonderful business owner and teacher in your own right.
Isn't that like an amazing American dream story? Like,
Yes.
you have this little girl from a village who somehow ends up at this podcast called The Republican Professor in the United States of America.
In Los Angeles.
I
Yeah.
think in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
yes, that is
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be emphasized.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to talk about this another time as well, because sometimes I
Sure.
wonder if it's tough for Republicans to live in a state like California, because, for example, one of my friends' girlfriend, she is a Republican, and I think she's very extremely outspoken and has all these ideas about the government control, and all these things, right?
This is one of your friends,
My One of my friends' girlfriend,
one
and
of your friends' friends.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think she is a really nice person, but sometimes I wonder to myself, like, she complains a lot about how awful California is, and so I wonder, wouldn't it be better than to move to maybe another state that aligns more with your political views? I mean, if it's really that torturous, because it really comes off as that sometimes, like
Mm.
she's kind of like tormented by all these laws in California and la la la. By the way, I did say when I came to the US, I didn't know anything about Republicans and Democrats. That doesn't make me some kind of an expert today, but I've learned a lot more for sure. I've learned a lot more since then, but I'm still not some kind of expert in the subject, but
Yeah.
I've learned so much more.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I'm very curious about. Sometimes it's like, what's life like for a Republican who lives in a state like California?
Mhm. Well,
Because
I'd be happy to share that with you at some point if you want.
go and
We'll get a
because
coffee afternoon. Afternoon, we'll
yes,
get a coffee.
yes, why not?
Take
For
you,
sure.
take you to the
And
shooting
let's
range.
do another, maybe we can do another podcast again, because
Sure,
I
absolutely.
mean,
I wanted to
um
be sensitive to you in this. We really appreciate spending all this time with us and going long form like Joe Rogan style. That's how Joe Rogan does
mhm,
it, long form,
mhm.
and just getting a deep, rich sense of your background and what life was like in your childhood. As you said, it was the happiest time of your life, right?
It
Even
was,
even happier than today.
but can it be happier than today? You're an adult. Back then, you were a child.
Yeah,
Like, I think those are two completely different
gotcha.
chapters of your life. So I think
Well,
if I were a child right now, I would want to have that kind of a life, if that makes
gotcha.
sense.
No, it makes perfect
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, just that rich detail and texture that you provided. I think you have given people a snapshot of a different life. And I think it's very helpful for our audience to have
Thank
been
you.
and also giving a rich background to your observations of America. And every time you describe America, I listen very carefully. Of course, I listen very
Hmm.
carefully to everything you're saying,
Hmm.
but especially when you describe America, because I'm so interested in how a thoughtful, curious, studious outsider like yourself who has respect for older people, respect for tradition,
Oh,
thinks of it,
100%.
because you're not sloppy and you're not lazy and you're not in what I call entitled. Um,
No, no.
you're you are you're so old school in the best way, and so I'm enriched every time I spend time with you. I don't spend much time with you very often, but every once in a while, we do get together and I get to meet some of your students, including some famous students,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
it's just great. So you're always welcome. But I was sensitive to the questions I would ask you because I also know that you run a business and I didn't want to I wanted to be sensitive to you trying to run a business in California, and I didn't know what kind of political issues come up with that with your customers. So I
No,
wanted to be
no, there
careful.
are no political issues. I
Okay.
feel like I've never had this sense of freedom, that
You're
magic
totally
word.
against cancel culture. I know that. That's why I asked you. So
I mean,
yeah.
I just don't think it serves any useful purpose. I
I
look
don't
at it
either.
as I look at it as these like
I think it's
little
actually harmful because it
one
prevents people
100%.
yeah,
Mhm,
prevents
mhm.
people from thinking. Because you're constantly wondering, you're processing your own thoughts with a foreign filter that's not you. It's
Mhm.
some rule that you think you're supposed to obey, otherwise there's consequences, and then you can't have your own thoughts, and other people can't get your thoughts.
And again, if just the things that came up during this podcast,
Yeah,
you're born in this place, then you move here, then there's another culture, then there's another way of thinking, then you go here, then you go there.
right.
What if you do that with this mindset? like I'm going to do exactly how I want. And if you dare to say anything to me, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
I think just regardless of what we think of censorship and how I try to be aware of it in my personal life, I think as human beings, we're always going to be sensitive to critique
Yes.
and to negative opinions of us. That's just
That's
human
right.
nature. That's just
That's right.
human nature. It's like,
That's
oh
right.
my God, I'm being critiqued. What have I done? It's probably something ancestral,
Yeah.
is activated to the point where it's like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. I'm in trouble, blah, 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 whatever. So I'm
Yeah.
aware of that. I know
That's
that
true.
exists, but you have to be aware enough to not allow that to control your life and control who I'm friends with and who I'm having conversations with and who I can talk to and can't talk to. Not a chance, not in my life. So
Yeah.
so that's how I choose to live my life, but not everybody grows up that way. And so all you can do is just share information, share experiences,
Mhm.
and you know, and we'll get into this on a more in more details because I would love to talk to you about this as a Republican. I really would, because it's like, oh, but what about you? Are you a Democrat? I usually vote Democrat, but am I a Democrat? No, I mean, there's so many things in the Democratic Party that I disagree with. So it's like it's also like finding that place, whatever the hell that is politically. Do we even have to find that place? That sometimes I think about those things too. But anyway, um, I've noticed that those things are also manipulated on both sides sometimes. It's like some people will hide behind that Republican shield with their ideas, but I don't
Sure.
necessarily believe that that's what the original Republican Party stands for. Same thing with Democrats. They'll hide behind that shield, but that's not really what it stands for, whatever the hell it stands for. So I'd love to have this conversation with you in more detail, maybe in a next
Sure.
podcast, please. It would
That
be
sounds
great.
great.
Mhm.
Well, we'll get you on the schedule to come back.
Okay. So since
Great.
lunch is approaching 3 more minutes, perhaps we
Let's
could just
let's do it. Yeah.
cut it
Okay.
here and then we'll pick up. Uh,
We're cutting here and we'll pick up later.
absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
Samara.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And I really mean that. My pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.